I've made hundreds of videos about the languages and countries of the world. Today I'd like to take you back in time with me as I show you some of my favorite videos about countries in Europe. And at the end, you'll find 2 bonus videos from 2015 which are no longer available anywhere else except in this compilation. So, stick around. It's the world's most visited country. It's roughly the shape of a hexagon, and it has territory on 5 different continents. Today we're talking about France. The French Republic, or just France, is not just a country known for its iconic monuments and rich culture. It's a country that's had a huge impact on the world. Most people think of France as a Western European country, which is basically true, but isn't the whole story. While 96% of France's population and 82% of France's territory is in Europe, it also has land in South America, the Caribbean, the Indian Ocean, the North Atlantic, Polynesia, and even an uninhabited island about 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Mexico. These overseas parts of France are remnants of the French colonial empire. France had a tremendous impact on the world by establishing extensive colonial areas around the globe in 2 stages. The first French colonial empire and the second French colonial empire. It can be said that France at one point was the most powerful country in the world. Most of those colonies are no longer under French rule, but their impact is obvious. Quebec is French-speaking, for instance, and French is an official language in 21 African countries. Another way that France impacted the world was through the French Revolution of the late 18th century. By overthrowing the monarchy, which was supposedly ordained by God, and emphasizing the people as the source of authority, the revolution inspired the rise of liberalism and nationalism in Europe and other parts of the world. The main part of France located in Europe is known as metropolitan France. It shares land borders with Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Monaco, Spain, and Andorra. Its land area is 551,500 square kilometers, which makes it slightly larger than Spain and a little smaller than Kenya. France's geography is very diverse. The northern and western coasts are characterized by river valleys and flat coastal plains. Near the coastline with its many beaches are some areas like the Armorican Massif, or Massif Armoricain, which feature rough, jagged mountains and cliffs. Much of France consists of the lowland plains and plateaus of the Paris Basin and the Aquitaine Basin. A highland called the Massif Central occupies much of the center of southern France, while 2 large mountain ranges, the Pyrenees and the Alps, mark the southern and southwestern borders of the country. Along the Mediterranean Sea, there's a narrow coastal plain which rapidly rises into highlands or mountains as you move inland from the coast. There are 4 rivers that are particularly important in France: the Seine River, the longest river in France, the Loire, the Garonne River, and the Rhône River. The vast majority of France has an oceanic climate, characterized by relatively mild temperatures and regular rainfall. The southern areas of France have a Mediterranean climate, with hot, dry summers and cool, wet winters. But because it's further from the Sahara Desert, France's southern coast usually doesn't experience the same blistering summer heat that southern Italy and Spain sometimes do. France is divided into 18 regions, 5 overseas collectivities, and 1 special collectivity. Of the 18 regions, 13 are located in metropolitan France, and 5 are located overseas: French Guiana, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Réunion, and Mayotte. Despite being overseas, they are integral parts of France and have exactly the same status as the metropolitan regions. Their citizens are French citizens, and they vote in French elections. Let's have a brief look at the metropolitan regions. The region of Île-de-France is centered around Paris, one of the most iconic capital cities in the world, with the Eiffel Tower, the 130-meter-high Montmartre area, and the Île de la Cité, an island in the Seine River in the middle of Paris where the city was founded. Because it's the region of Paris, région parisienne, Île-de-France is by far the most populous region of the country, with 12 million people. But the Paris metropolitan area spreads into each of the neighboring regions as well. The Grand Est region contains the historical areas of Champagne, or Champagne, and Alsace-Lorraine. Numerous tributaries of the Seine River wind through this area, and the land is fertile and pastoral. Many famous agricultural products are produced here, like champagne, choucroute, or sauerkraut, and quiche. Some parts of this region have historically had a Germanic language-speaking majority, and were contested areas between France and Germany for centuries. Much of this area was devastated during World War I. In fact, there's an area referred to as Zone Rouge in Grand Est and the neighboring region of Hauts-de-France, where people can't live due to soil poisoning and unexploded munitions from that war over a century ago. Hauts-de-France borders Belgium to the northeast. It's also the closest region to the United Kingdom and is connected to England by the Channel Tunnel. The region of Normandy was settled by Vikings or Norsemen in the 9th century. More rural than other parts of France, most of its people live along the Seine River. Normandy's position on the English Channel gives it enormous strategic value. Normandy played an important role in two famous cross-channel invasions nearly a millennium apart, in 1066 and in 1944. The region of Brittany is rugged, hilly, and was historically difficult to traverse. Because of the relative isolation this caused, the region is home to a distinctive people, culture, and language, the Breton language, or Breton. The regions of Pays de la Loire and Centre-Val de Loire are home to the Loire Valley, an 800 square kilometer valley through which the Loire River flows. It's known for its lush vineyards and orchards that line the riverbanks and its historic towns. Part of the valley was made a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the year 2000. Also famous for its vineyards is the region of Bourgogne-Franche-Comté. But the Jura Mountains occupy much of the eastern part of the region, along the border with Switzerland. The region of Nouvelle-Aquitaine has a diverse landscape. The Garonne River runs through much of it, including through Bordeaux, the region's largest city. The lands around the Garonne are highly fertile, and many famous wines come from there. The northeast of Aquitaine marks the beginning of the hilly Massif Central, and at the southern end of the region, the Pyrenees Mountains mark the border with Spain. And this is where the French Basque country is located, historically home to the Basque people and language. The Pyrenees Mountains also stretch into the neighboring region of Occitanie, or Occitanie in French, the southernmost province on the mainland, which borders Spain and Andorra. It's the biggest wine-producing region in the world and produces 36% of France's wines. But more importantly, it's the historical home of the Occitan culture and language. Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur is famous for its beautiful Mediterranean coast, especially the French Riviera and its cities like Nice, Cannes, and Saint-Tropez. Known for their historic streets, white sandy beaches, and luxurious resorts. Here the population is densely concentrated along the coast. Head inland and you'll quickly discover a completely different landscape full of rural villages on the slopes of tall mountains. France's highest mountain though, Mont Blanc, is located in the region to the north, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and straddles the border with Italy. The island of Corsica historically had close ties to Italy and was ruled by the Republic of Pisa, then Genoa, until 1755. Its historical native language is Corsican, which is closely related to Standard Italian, and Italian remained the official language there until 1859, even under French rule. Hilly and remote, Corsica's population is the smallest of any region of metropolitan France. It's rather surprising that Corsica was the birthplace of possibly the most famous French person ever, Napoleon Bonaparte. In addition to France's metropolitan regions and overseas regions, it also has 5 overseas collectivities. They have a different status than regions, giving them more autonomy. A 6th special collectivity is New Caledonia, which has an even higher degree of autonomy, and in recent times has held referendums on its independence, though the results were overwhelmingly in favor of remaining part of France. France has a population of 65 million people, around the same as the United Kingdom. The population is highly urbanized, with over 80% of the people living in cities. The population is also highly concentrated along the country's major river systems and the coasts. France has a large population of immigrants, especially from other EU countries and from former French colonies, but no statistics are allowed to be kept on ethnicity or religion in France, so there are differing estimates on its exact demographics. Language. On the surface, the linguistic situation in France is simple. Their language is French. French is the sole official language, but there are also various regional languages spoken around the country, much more so among the older generations. There's the Celtic language Breton, spoken in the Brittany region, the mysterious language isolate Basque, Germanic dialects, and numerous Gallo-Romance languages closely related to French. The most closely related to Standard French are the Langue d'Oil to the north, and the less closely related are varieties of Languedoc, the Occitan language, which I mentioned before. These languages have little status inside the Republic, and as a result, the number of speakers of these languages is declining rapidly in favor of French. Economy. France's economy is the third largest in Europe, after Germany and the UK, and the seventh largest in the world. France is a developed country with an economy based largely on services, though industry and agriculture are still important to the economy. France is the second largest agricultural exporter in the world, after the United States. In the 1960s, the government began investing heavily in new technologies, under a program known as Champion National, in order to restore French prestige. One of the best-known outcomes of this investment is the TGV, Train à grande vitesse, France's high-speed railway. The TGV has transformed the geography of France, bringing cities like Tours and Le Mans into commuting distance of Paris, and allowing faraway cities such as Marseille to be reached from Paris in just over 3 hours. As you've probably noticed if you've ever visited France, tourism is hugely important to the economy. France received 89 million overseas visitors in 2019, making it the most visited country in the world. France has the fourth largest number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites of any country. Actually, at the time of recording, it's tied with Spain for fourth place. Of course, there are obvious sites like the Eiffel Tower, but also others like the spectacular cliffs and valleys of the Gulf of Porto, and the Chauvet Cave, with some of the oldest and most amazingly preserved cave paintings in the world. More than just a transcontinental country, France has territory on almost every continent. Much of France's geographic and demographic diversity stem from its past as the global superpower. It may no longer be the global superpower, but its culture, language, and economy still have a tremendous influence on the world today. It's the lowest-lying country in Europe, it has more bicycles than people, and on average its people are the tallest in the world. The country I'm talking about is the Netherlands. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, more commonly known as just the Netherlands, and somewhat imprecisely as Holland, is a sovereign state and constitutional monarchy located mainly in Western Europe, but some of its territory is located overseas. There are 4 constituent countries of the kingdom. The largest by far is the Netherlands, located on the European continent, making up 98% of the kingdom's landmass. The 3 other constituent countries include Aruba, Curaçao, and Sint Maarten, all located in the Caribbean. These 3 constituent countries are dependent on the Netherlands for matters of foreign policy, defense, and trade, but when it comes to internal affairs, they're autonomous, with their own parliaments. Also making up part of the kingdom are the 3 Caribbean island territories of Bonaire, Saba, and Sint Eustatius. So, to be clear, the Kingdom of the Netherlands has 4 constituent countries, one of which is called the Netherlands. The kingdom has a population of 17.5 million people, the vast majority of which live in the Netherlands, meaning the constituent country in Europe. It has a total land area of about 41,800 square kilometers. This makes Netherlands the second most densely populated country in the European Union after Malta, and the 16th most densely populated country in the world. The country is bordered by Belgium to the southwest and Germany to the east and southeast. It's also bordered to the north and west by the North Sea. The area we know today as the Netherlands has a long and bloody history, with many wars being fought and different groups seizing control over the centuries. The modern Netherlands can be traced back to around 1568, when the people of the region revolted against Spanish rule, led by William of Orange. William of Orange is thus considered to be the founding father of the Netherlands, and his influence can be seen today, with the color orange used to symbolize national unity. In 1579, 7 provinces formed their own union, named the United Provinces of Netherlands. Spain recognized the independence of the Netherlands in the year 1648, signaling the end of the 80 Years' War, or the Dutch War of Independence. During the 1600s, the Netherlands grew in naval power and established many trading posts and colonies across the world, even before Spain recognized their independence. The primary driver of this was the Dutch East India Company, which gained a monopoly on all trade from the East Indies, making them extraordinarily wealthy. At their peak, they were worth more than Apple, Amazon, and Google combined, if we adjust for today's dollars, that is. This economic success led to what is called the Golden Age of the Netherlands in the 17th century, with Amsterdam serving as the center of world trade. Along with this newfound wealth came great developments in the arts and sciences. With disposable income, Dutch citizens were happy to spend money on luxuries like fine art. One of the most famous painters in history was active during this time, Rembrandt, who is known for his mastery of capturing light and shadows. The Netherlands also attracted scientists from all over Europe, leading to an environment conducive to innovation. For example, the engineer and mathematician Simon Steven is credited with developing the modern Dutch methods of controlling water, and in the next section you'll find out just how important this turned out to be. After the Golden Age ended in the 18th century, the economy of the Netherlands began to decline relative to others, but it retains its place among the nations of Europe, and its contributions didn't end when the Golden Age did. For example, another famous artist is Vincent van Gogh, who was born in the Netherlands in the 19th century and has had a strong influence on the development of modern art. The word Netherlands literally translates as lower countries, a fitting name for a country where only 50% of the land is higher than 1 meter above sea level. Over a quarter of its land is actually below sea level, largely a result of land reclamation that began as early as the 14th century. These low-lying areas are known as polders. If those areas lie below sea level, then why aren't they flooded? Well, that's because the water is kept out by dikes, embankments that were built to keep the water out. The high land that does exist lies to the south, where the land rises into the foothills of the Ardennes Mountains. The highest point in the Netherlands is the mountain of Valserberg, at 322 meters tall. It's situated where the borders of 3 countries meet, Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany, and part of the mountain lies in each country. Canals, rivers, and streams make up a large part of the Netherlands, as the Netherlands is home to the river delta of the Rhine, Maas, and Scheldt rivers. These make the Netherlands a fertile place, perfect for growing a wide variety of crops and plants. Perhaps the most spectacular of these are tulips, which during peak season can even be seen in satellite images from space. The country's largest lakes, IJsselmeer and Markermeer, are both man-made. They used to be a saltwater inlet of the North Sea, Zuiderzee, but it was dammed off from the North Sea by a dike in 1932 and became called IJsselmeer, with meer meaning lake. Then in 1975, Markermeer was dammed off from IJsselmeer and became a new lake. Both are now freshwater lakes and serve as reservoirs. A very large part of the inlet was also turned into reclaimed land. In other words, new land was created in part of the sea by creating dikes or dams to block water out. Then the land was drained of its water using windmills. Almost all of the land of the province of Flevoland is land reclaimed from the Zuiderzee. Flevoland is one of the Netherlands' 12 provinces, which can be grouped into 4 regions. Western Netherlands, where Flevoland is located, at least according to one way of defining the region, Northern Netherlands, Eastern Netherlands, and Southern Netherlands. The other provinces in Western Netherlands are North Holland, South Holland, and Utrecht. These provinces are where the Randstad is located, the large urban area where the Netherlands' 4 largest cities and their surrounding towns are located: Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague, and Utrecht. If considered together, they form one of the largest, most populous metropolitan regions in Europe, with around 8.5 million people and an incredibly important economic area. Rotterdam Port, situated on the Rhine-Maas-Scheldt Delta, is Europe's largest port and stretches over 40 kilometers in length. The northern Netherlands is the most sparsely populated region and consists of the provinces of Drenthe, Groningen, and Friesland. Friesland is home to a distinct culture with its own language, the Frisian language, specifically West Frisian, which is an official language at the provincial level. Another recognized regional language is Low Saxon, several varieties of which are spoken in Groningen, Drenthe, and part of Friesland. The city of Groningen can be found in the province of the same name. It's known as a university town where students make up around 25% of the population. The eastern Netherlands consists of 2 provinces, Gelderland, the largest of the 12 provinces, and Overijssel. Overijssel is dotted with medieval towns and their historical attractions, such as Deventer, which was at one time a major trade city that rivaled Amsterdam. The regional language Low Saxon that I mentioned a moment ago is also spoken in these 2 provinces as well. The southern Netherlands region consists of the provinces of Limburg, North Brabant, and Zeeland. Like Flevoland, Zeeland consists of land reclaimed from the Zuiderzee. Limburg is quite different from the rest of the country because of its rolling hills and mountains. It's also where another recognized regional language is spoken, Limburgish. Both Limburg and Brabant are distinct because they are largely Catholic rather than Protestant. Religion in general has declined though, especially Protestantism, with over 50% of the population declaring no religion at all. The kingdom's constituent countries and territories in the Caribbean are obviously very different from the Netherlands and Europe. They can be divided into 2 groups geographically, those that are located on the Leeward Islands and those on the Leeward Antilles. Saba, St. Eustatius, and St. Martin are all located in the Leeward Islands, east of Cuba, and share a similar subclimate and biodiversity. The islands in this region are affected by volcanic activity, bringing highly fertile soil from the ash of previous eruptions. This results in lush vegetation. The volcanic activity has also resulted in rugged mountains. One mountain on the island of Saba is 877 meters high, about 3 times the height of the tallest point in mainland Netherlands. This mountain is appropriately named Mount Scenery. The ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao, are situated just north of the coast of South America and form part of the Leeward Antilles. Without much volcanic activity, they're characterized by low elevation and an arid climate. So rather than the lush vegetation of the Leeward Antilles, dry desert landscape is the norm in the ABC Islands, outside of well-maintained resorts at least. The Caribbean parts of the kingdom have a tropical climate with hot weather year-round. The temperature rarely ever drops below 20 degrees Celsius. Contrast that with the mainland Netherlands, where winter temperatures often dip below 0 degrees Celsius with snow. As for language, Papiamento is a co-official language alongside Dutch in Aruba and Curaçao, and English is co-official in Sint Maarten and Curaçao. The official language of the Kingdom of Netherlands as a whole is Dutch, of course. If you're heading to Netherlands and you don't speak any Dutch, don't stress about it too much. Dutch people in general have an impressive grasp of the English language, so if you know English, and if you're watching this video you probably do, then you'll be able to get by just fine. If you want to learn more about Dutch, Frisian, and Papiamento, check out my videos on them on the GEOfocus channel. The link is in the description. Arising from its maritime environment, one of the most famous foods in the Netherlands is Dutch new herring, raw herring soaked in a preserving marinade. Herring being a type of fish, of course. Dutch people also consume lots of cheese and other dairy products. 2 cheeses from the Netherlands that are eaten all over the world are Gouda and Edam. But the Netherlands might be best known for its snacks and desserts, such as stroopwafels, literally syrup waffles. They consist of waffles with a caramel-like syrup filling in the center. Then there's poffertjes. These resemble small, fluffy pancakes. They're usually sweet, but savory variants exist. But Dutch people don't only eat small pancakes, they also eat big ones. Pannenkoeken, Dutch for pancakes, are often eaten as a main course for dinner, not for breakfast as they are in North America. They're also thinner, though not quite as thin as a French crepe. There's a wide variety of recipes, with different fillings like fruit, meat, or vegetables. Though even if it has a filling like meat, Dutch people just might pour some icing sugar or a sweet syrup onto it anyway. The Kingdom of the Netherlands is a fascinating place that might surprise you for many reasons. One thing that surprised me about the country is just how much of its territory consists of reclaimed land, 17% of the country's land in total. That's pretty amazing. How about you? What's something that you find surprising about the Netherlands? And if you're from the Netherlands, what's something you'd like other people to know about your country? Leave your comments down below. It has more than 1,300 hot springs, it's bisected by the Danube River, and it's the land of the Magyar people. Today we're talking about Hungary. Hungary is a country located in Central Europe, in the Carpathian Basin. If you make the mistake of saying that Hungary is in Eastern Europe, all of your Hungarian friends will instantly block you on social media. Hungary is bordered by Austria to the west, Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia to the south and southwest, Romania to the southeast, Ukraine to the northeast, and Slovakia to the north. It's a landlocked country, meaning that it's surrounded by land and does not border any sea or ocean. These days, it's not a particularly large country. Its total size is 93,028 square kilometers, making it the 110th largest country in the world, slightly larger than Portugal. Hungary has a population of 9.6 million people. The population is mainly of the Magyar ethnicity, the cultural and linguistic descendants of the Magyars who arrived in the Carpathian Basin in the late 9th century. The official language is Hungarian, or
Magyar nyelv.
Magyar being the Hungarian word for Hungarian. It's the native language of approximately 99% of the population. There are also minority languages like Romanian and German, which are spoken in some border communities. Hungarian is a member of the Uralic language family. 2 other European languages related to Hungarian are Finnish and Estonian, though there's no language that's mutually intelligible with Hungarian. The Magyars and their Uralic language originated in the vicinity of the Ural Mountains, which are located in present-day Russia and northwestern Kazakhstan. But sometime around 2,000 years ago, it's not clear exactly when, they began a slow migration westward, over the Pontic steppe and into the northern Caucasus region and the area north of the Black Sea. There were 7 Magyar tribes united in a tribal confederation. The 7 tribes crossed the Carpathian Mountains around the year 896 under the leadership of Arpad and established the Principality of Hungary. In the year 1000, Hungary's first king, King Stephen I, a descendant of Arpad, established the Christian Kingdom of Hungary and began converting the population to Christianity, replacing their traditional form of paganism. The majority is still Christian today. According to a 2019 survey, 62% of Hungarians declared themselves to be Roman Catholic, 5% Protestant, 8% another type of Christian, and 22% no religion or undeclared. In 1241, during the reign of King Béla IV, Hungary became threatened by the Mongol invasion from the east and north. After the Hungarians were disastrously defeated at the Battle of Mohi, the Mongols destroyed much of the country and killed much of its population. After they pulled out the following year, Hungary's King Béla IV began heavily fortifying the country with a network of fortresses and welcomed settlers from nearby countries to repopulate areas where everyone had been killed. He also formed a defensive alliance with other countries under threat from the Mongols. A second Mongol invasion in 1285 was successfully repelled by the Hungarians. Béla is often referred to as the second founder of Hungary because of his efforts to rebuild and strengthen it. The Hungarian king who strengthened the country the most internally was Matthias Corvinus during his rule from 1458 to 1490. He reduced internal conflict through the centralization of power and defense, leading to more economic prosperity and less risk of invasion. But after his rule ended, Hungary became internally fractured again, and the Ottoman Empire seized the opportunity to invade. Hungary became partitioned between the Ottoman Empire, the Habsburg Empire, and Transylvania. Around 150 years later, all of Hungary was taken back from the Ottoman Empire during the Great Turkish War and made part of Hungary again, but as part of the Habsburg Empire, not an independent Hungary. The Hungarians remained under the rule of the Habsburg Empire, then the Austrian Empire from 1804, but Hungarian pro-independence revolution and war led to a compromise form of government, the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary in 1867. It gave both Austria and Hungary their own parliament and capital, but they were ruled by a single king. Austria-Hungary took part in the First World War on the side of the Central Powers, the German Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. After being defeated in the war, Austria-Hungary ceased to exist, and the size of Hungary was drastically reduced to 28% of what it had previously been. Before the war, Hungary had been a multi-ethnic kingdom, with Hungarian speakers making up 48% of the population, while Romanians, Slovaks, Germans, and others made up the rest. But the areas without a Hungarian majority were turned into new states based on their majority ethnicity. After the partition, Hungarian speakers made up around 89% of the population, and that number continued to grow. Today there are still Hungarian minorities living in the neighboring countries. In World War II, Hungary was allied with the Axis powers, Nazi Germany and Italy, until it was occupied by the Soviet Union in 1944. Hungary was never an actual part of the Soviet Union, but it remained under Soviet influence and became a communist country for 50 years, from 1949 until 1989. Since the end of communism, Hungary has liberalized its economy and joined the European Union in 2004. The capital of Hungary is Budapest, which was officially created in 1873 through the merger of 3 neighboring cities, Pest, Buda, and Óbuda. It's home to nearly 1.8 million people. Budapest is also home to many sites of historical importance, including Fisherman's Bastion, near Buda Castle, with an incredible view of the Danube River that divides Buda from Pest. The original castle fortifications were built in the 13th century by King Béla IV, the second founder of Hungary. He also erected the nearby Matthias Church during his reign. These sites are all part of the Castle Quarter, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Budapest is also home to 2 other UNESCO World Heritage Sites, the banks of the Danube River and Andrassy Avenue, a 2.5-kilometer tree-lined boulevard that was inaugurated in 1876. It's today considered one of Europe's most beautiful avenues. Budapest is also home to Dohány Street Synagogue, the largest synagogue in Europe and the second largest in the world. Hungary is composed of 20 top-level administrative units, the capital city of Budapest, and 19 counties. For statistics, they are grouped into 7 wider regions, and these regions can be further grouped together to reflect the 3 major geographic regions of Hungary, the Great Hungarian Plain, much of which lies east of the Danube River, Transdanubia, which lies to the west of the Danube River, and the northern Hungarian mountains. The capital city of Budapest is strategically located on the Danube River, just south of the North Hungarian mountains, at the crossroads of these three geographic regions. The Great Hungarian Plain is mainly located east of the Danube River. Its most remarkable feature is the plains themselves and their vastness. An easy way to experience the Great Hungarian Plain and its traditional way of life is to visit the Mata stud farm, near Hortobágy National Park. You can experience riding in a horse-drawn carriage through the pastoral environment and seeing their traditional equestrian show. Of course, the Plains region is also full of historically important towns like Szeged, Kecskemét, and Gyula. Transdanubia, west of the Danube and also to the south of the Danube, is Transdanubia. Its name means across the Danube. It has a variety of landscapes, including the Little Plain in the northwest, the Transdanubian Hills in the south, and the Transdanubian Mountains stretching from the central part of the region to the northeast. One of the most visited destinations in Transdanubia is Lake Balaton, the biggest lake in Central Europe, covering 592 square kilometers of surface. It's well loved for its resort towns and also for its wine-growing regions on the north side of the lake. Another impressive and important place in Transdanubia is the city of Esztergom, in the north of the country, near the border with Slovakia. It used to be the capital of Hungary from 972 to 1249, when King Béla IV moved the capital to Buda. Esztergom is located on the western bank of the Danube River, close to where the Transdanubian Mountains meet the North Hungarian Mountains. The North Hungarian Mountains are part of the Western Carpathian Mountains. Much of the Western Carpathian Range lies outside the borders of modern Hungary, in Slovakia to the north, and the Eastern and Southern Carpathian Mountains lie within Romania and Serbia. But in the past, they mostly lied within the borders of the larger historical Kingdom of Hungary. The highest point in Hungary is located in the North Hungarian Mountains, Mount Kékes, at 1,014 meters above sea level. This is another of Hungary's most popular attractions. One more famous destination is the town of Eger, where you can find Eger Castle, built to replace an earlier castle destroyed during the first Mongol invasion. There's also the Minorite Church of St. Anthony of Padua, one of the most impressive Baroque buildings in the world, and other historical sites. Another place to check out is Hollókő Castle, one of the 13th century forts built by King Béla IV to help secure the country against the Mongols. Hungary is also known for its thousands of thermal spas. Just in Budapest alone, around 120 hot springs produce 70 million liters of thermal water daily. Hungary's climate is largely a continental climate with warm or hot summers and cold, snowy winters, but just how hot or cold depends on the area and elevation. In Budapest, which is at an average elevation of 102 meters above sea level, the average winter temperatures range from around -1 to 5 degrees. In the summer, the average temperatures range from around 18 degrees to 29 degrees. Its climate is technically temperate because in winter the daily average is above 0 degrees, but not by much, so it borders on a continental climate, which is the norm at higher elevations. Cuisine. Hungary has lots of foods similar to those in nearby countries, due to centuries of interaction and changing borders and rulers. Some important Hungarian dishes include goulash, a meat stew or soup with vegetables and paprika, fisherman's soup, which is made from a mix of different fish with lots of paprika, stuffed cabbage leaves filled with minced pork and vegetables, and paprika. Maybe you're noticing a pattern. You could also try langos, a type of deep-fried flatbread, or dobos torta, a chocolate sponge cake with chocolate buttercream covered with caramel. And there goes my keto diet. Hungary is a fascinating country whose geography has hugely impacted its history, and whose geography has been greatly impacted by its history. Remember that just over 100 years ago, it was more than 3 times its current size. It may be off the beaten path for many travelers, but for those interested in history and the peoples of Europe, it seems like a highly rewarding destination. But don't worry, there are plenty of stunning monuments and architectural and natural wonders as well. We don't really have time to discuss Hungarian culture in this video. If you're from Hungary, what's something about Hungarian culture that you would like to share with the audience? And other people, what's something that you find interesting or surprising about Hungary? It has days without darkness, it has more heavy metal bands per capita than any other country in the world, and it's not part of Scandinavia. These are just 3 of the things that you're going to learn about Finland. Finland is known for being a wealthy country, and not only economically. With its excellent air quality, low crime rate, and renowned education system, many other countries look up to Finland as a model to learn from. Finland is located in northern Europe, bordered by Russia to the east, Sweden to the west, and Norway to the north. To the south and southwest, it's bordered by the Baltic Sea and two of its arms, the Gulf of Bothnia and the Gulf of Finland. It's actually the northernmost country in the European Union. In fact, 1/3 of the country is located above the Arctic Circle. Due to its Arctic location, the northern part of the country is covered by snow for 7 months of the year, and temperatures commonly drop to -30 degrees Celsius. But during a cold spell and the height of winter, it could reach -40 or even -50 degrees Celsius. The southern part of the country is covered in snow for 3 or 4 months a year, with milder temperatures, but still fairly cold. Because of its proximity to Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, Finland is often assumed to be part of Scandinavia, but that's not really accurate. Part of northwestern Finland is situated on the Scandinavian peninsula, but most of the country isn't. Finland is, however, considered a Nordic country, a wider classification that also includes Iceland, as well as the Faroe Islands and Greenland, which are territories of Denmark. This particular Nordic country, Finland, has a land area of nearly 338,400 square kilometers, making it slightly smaller than the Republic of Congo and slightly larger than Vietnam. Just 7 square kilometers larger, to be precise. Finland has a small population of around 5.5 million, making it the third most sparsely populated country in Europe, after Iceland and Norway. There are no official statistics on ethnicity, but the vast majority of the people are ethnically Finnish. In 2018, 7.3% of the population was of immigrant background, with around 1/3 of them being of European origin, and most of the rest being of Asian or African origin. The country's most widely spoken official language is Finnish, which, contrary to popular belief, is not related to Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish. In fact, it's not even an Indo-European language. It's from the Finno-Ugric language family, which also includes Estonian, Hungarian, several languages native to Russia, and the Sami languages, 3 of which are minority languages spoken in northern Finland, and are official languages at the local level. The other official language at the national level is Swedish, which is spoken by around 5.5% of the population, and in the autonomous Åland Islands, Swedish is the only official language. Speakers of the Proto-Finno-Ugric language are thought to have arrived in Finland between 5000 and 3000 BC. Before their arrival, the land was populated by Sami people, who at the time must have spoken a different unknown language. The Sami were pushed northward by the incoming Finno-Ugric people, and also adopted Proto-Finno-Ugric, which both the Sami languages and the Finnish language developed from. Between the 12th and 14th centuries, Finland came under Swedish control, and Swedish became the official language until the 19th century. This is why there's still a Swedish-speaking minority in Finland today. But most Finns maintained their own culture and language in everyday life, so Finland didn't become completely Swedish-speaking. In 1809, after a war between the Kingdom of Sweden and the Russian Empire, the Finnish territory became an autonomous duchy of Russia for over a century. In 1863, Finnish was made an official language in addition to Swedish. After the 1917 Russian Revolution, Finland finally declared itself independent, but then fell into a civil war between the pro-Soviet Reds and the pro-Germany Whites. The Whites were victorious and attempted to establish Finland as a kingdom with a German king, but this failed, and in 1919, Finland became a republic with an elected president. Speaking of elections, in 1906, Finland became the first European country to give women the right to vote. Of course, Finland was not yet an independent country, it was still part of the Russian Empire, but it was autonomous and it made its own laws, so I guess we can count it. Both before and after its independence, the Finnish name of the country has long been Suomi. The origin of this name is unknown, but according to one explanation, it's related to the name of the Sami people, who originally inhabited the whole country. According to another explanation, it comes from the words Suomaa, which means land of swamps, referring to swamps that once covered much more of the country than they do now. Today, Finland is known much more for its forests than for its swamps, with 78% of its land, or 20.1 million hectares, covered by forests. That makes Finland the most heavily forested country in Europe. It's also one of the top-ranked countries in terms of air quality, partly thanks to its forests. Finland is divided into 19 administrative regions, which can be grouped into several geographic regions, which to some extent correspond with Finland's old provinces, which were abolished in 2009. Lapland, or Lappi as it's called in Finnish, is the largest and coldest of Finland's regions. Being partially located in the Arctic Circle, in the heart of winter, Lapland experiences Arctic nights, known as kaamos, days when the sun doesn't rise above the horizon at all. It's not pitch black for 24 hours straight, but at some times of the day it looks like dawn or dusk when the sun is near the horizon, but not above it. During the summer in Lapland, you can experience the polar opposite, the nightless night, when the sun is up for 24 hours a day. In the far north of Lapland, this can last for over 2 months. It's also one of the best places in the world to see the northern lights, which are visible there for more than 200 nights a year. And if that's not enough of an Arctic experience for you, you can also visit the home of Santa Claus, the village of Rovaniemi. Apparently Santa lives in a tourist trap. He lives there with his reindeer. That's caribou for you Americans and Canadians. There are around 200,000 reindeer in Lapland, which is more than the human population. The indigenous Sami people of this region have traditionally been involved in reindeer herding, and even today the reindeer remain an important part of their culture and lives. South of Lapland lies the city of Oulu. It's in the center of the country, but is still considered part of northern Finland. In fact, it's referred to as the largest city in northern Finland. Unlike the second largest town in the north, Rovaniemi, which is known as the home of the real Santa, totally real, Oulu is known as a technology hub, with numerous tech companies clustered around Oulu University's Faculty of Technology. Lakeland. As you might guess from the name of this region, it's full of lakes. Well, most of the land consists of forest, but around 25% of it is covered by lakes. There are at least 55,000 lakes here that are at least 200 meters wide. One of them is Saimaa Lake. It covers 4,400 square kilometers, making it the largest lake in Finland and the fourth largest in all of Europe. The labyrinth of lakes and waterways and the stunning national parks in this region make it a popular destination for outdoor activities like lake cruises, canoeing or kayaking, hiking, and biking. In winter, when the lakes are frozen, you can actually go out onto the ice and explore by snowmobile, cross-country skis, or bike. Though you should probably do that with someone who knows what they're doing. This region is also home to Tampere, the third largest city and second largest urban area in all of Finland. Southern Finland. Lakeland extends down to the edge of the southern Finland region, by far the most populous region, especially Uusimaa, where Helsinki is located. Helsinki, the capital of Finland, is its largest city, with a population of around 650,000 in the city itself and around 1.3 million in the greater Helsinki area. It was a small, sleepy town until Finland came under Russian control and the capital was moved from Turku to Helsinki, and Finns began to move there from all over the country. The Russian authorities rebuilt the city, which can be seen in the neoclassical architecture of the city center. There are a number of historical towns in the greater Helsinki area, such as Hämeenlinna, home to the 13th century castle, Häme Castle, and Porvoo. Porvoo is one of Finland's medieval towns, and widely considered its most beautiful one, with its old town and 15th century cathedral. The southern coast is where many of Finland's bilingual communities are located, with a significant Swedish-speaking population. There are also numerous bilingual communities on the western coast. The city of Turku is located in this region, which was the capital during the 700 years of Swedish rule. It's also the oldest city in the country, appearing on maps as early as the year 1154. 92 kilometers north of Turku lies Rauma, another historical city whose old city is a UNESCO heritage site. The archipelago. Just off the western coast lies an archipelago, the largest archipelago in the world based on the number of islands, with approximately 40,000 islands. An important part of this archipelago is the Åland Islands, which I mentioned earlier, an autonomous region where the only official language is Swedish. Out of the thousands of Åland Islands, only 60 are inhabited, and 90% of the population lives on the main island, Fasta Åland. Do the people of Åland like being part of Finland, or would they prefer to be part of Sweden, or maybe independent? Well, surveys indicate that the vast majority are happy with the status quo, since they have a great deal of autonomy. The Åland Islands have the oldest churches in Finland, dating back to as early as the 13th century. Most churches in Finland are evangelical Lutheran churches. Evangelical Lutheranism is the most common religion in Finland, at 82.5% of the population, though of course many are non-practicing. Finns were converted to Christianity under Swedish rule. Before that, they practiced a Finnish variety of paganism, involving polytheism and the worship of gods representing the elements of nature. Education. The Finnish education system is renowned for its methodology and results. Teachers are respected professionals, with all teachers needing to have a master's degree, and teaching programs are highly selective. Teachers normally work closely with the same students for a number of years and can tailor their instruction individually, rather than students having different teachers every year. The school day is also less strenuous, starting later, finishing earlier, and having longer breaks between lesson periods. A comfortable and relaxed learning environment contributes to students' learning and happiness. Finland has actually been rated the happiest country in the world 5 times. One of Finland's main priorities is the overall well-being of its citizens. With so many happy and contented people, it might seem odd that Finland has the highest concentration of metal bands in the world, with 53.2 metal bands per 100,000 people. Perhaps, just perhaps, the stereotype that metal fans are all miserable, self-destructive maniacs isn't quite accurate. You're probably getting the impression that Finland is an incredibly nice place, and most people agree that it is. That's why it routinely ranks among the top countries in the world for quality of life. Now over to you. What's a place you would like to visit in Finland, or what's something you'd like to experience there? And if you're from Finland, what's a misconception that people have about your country? Let us know in the comments down below. It has more islands than any other country, there are just 5 people per square kilometer, and it's no longer neutral. Today we're talking about Sweden. Sweden is located in Northern Europe, quite northern. The country lies between 55 and 70 degrees north, and around 15% of its area lies above the Arctic Circle. Sweden shares borders with Norway to the west and north, and Finland to the east and northeast. Sweden's 1,600-kilometer border with Norway is the longest in Europe. Despite being separated from nearby Denmark by the Strait of Öresund, since the year 2000, Sweden has been connected with Denmark by the Öresund Bridge and a connected underground tunnel, which together extend 12 kilometers across the strait. With an area of 450,295 square kilometers, Sweden is just slightly smaller than Spain and almost the same size as Papua New Guinea. The official language of Sweden is Swedish, of course. It's a North Germanic language which is very closely related to Norwegian and Danish. There are several videos about Swedish and the North Germanic languages on my other channel, GEOfocus, which you can find in the description of this video. The language learning app Duolingo has a Swedish course, and most of the people using it to learn Swedish are located in Sweden. This is due to the large number of immigrants and refugees currently living in Sweden who learn Swedish as a second language. Sweden has a long history of accepting people fleeing conflicts and disasters around the world. This includes Jewish refugees fleeing occupied Denmark during World War II, refugees from the Balkan Wars in the 1990s, and refugees from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, and other countries in the 21st century. But not all immigrants to Sweden are refugees. Many people move there primarily for work or family reunification. These immigrants live alongside the majority who descend from medieval Norsemen. The human presence in what is now Sweden goes back as far as 12,000 BC, but written records about the area are sparse until around 1000 AD, during the Viking Age, when Swedes, Danes, and Norwegians raided towns across Europe and settled in areas of Northern Europe like the British Isles, Ireland, Normandy, plus the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland. Sweden was made up of small kingdoms and chiefdoms belonging to different tribal groups like the Swedes and Geats. But Sweden grew into a unified kingdom, specifically under the rule of King Olof Konung, and adopted Christianity over the course of the 11th and 12th centuries. The Åland Islands and the coast of Finland were already settled by Swedes, but in the mid-13th century, Finland was gradually conquered by Sweden and remained under its control for more than 5.5 centuries. Sweden and Norway formed a union in 1319. Then in the late 14th century, Sweden and Norway were unified with Denmark as part of the Kalmar Union. Denmark was the strongest of the kingdoms and gradually expanded its control over the others. Many in Sweden grew opposed to the Kalmar Union, and in 1523, Gustav Vasa, whose father had been killed by the Danish, became king of Sweden and permanently removed it from the union and the domination of Denmark. During the 17th and 18th centuries, Sweden grew into a great military power and an empire as it acquired territories through war, in addition to Finland, which it already controlled. These territories included parts of Germany and Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and parts of Russia. At certain points in time, it also included overseas territories in Africa, the Caribbean, and the present-day USA. Sweden gradually lost these territories over the course of the 18th and 19th centuries, including the devastating loss of Finland to Russia in 1809. Sweden took part in one last war in 1813 to 1814, which forced Denmark to give Norway to Sweden, and the two countries remained in a personal union until 1905. But the earlier territorial losses led to Sweden's policy of neutrality, which it maintained throughout the 19th century and most of the 20th century. It even remained neutral during the Second World War and throughout the Cold War. But in recent decades, Sweden has become less strict in its neutrality, having close ties to the NATO alliance, and in May of 2022, Sweden applied to become a NATO member in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Sweden doesn't share any land borders with Russia, but the two countries share a maritime border on the Baltic Sea, and Sweden is uneasy about the vulnerability of its largest island, the strategically located island of Gotland. Sweden is well known for its staggering number of islands. With 267,570 of them, it has the largest number of islands of any country in the world, just ahead of neighboring Norway. Of course, many of those islands are tiny, more like large rocks, and less than 1,000 of them are inhabited. One small uninhabited island is Märket Island, which is located between Sweden and Finland and is divided between the two countries. Look at this strange boundary line. Why on earth would a border be drawn like this? What happened is that Finland built a lighthouse on the highest point of the island, which happened to be on the Swedish side, disregarding the border because the island was uninhabited. The two countries later agreed to a land swap so that both sides would maintain the same amount of territory, while allowing Finland to keep its lighthouse. I guess it wasn't worth fighting a war over an island with only 0.03 square kilometers of territory. A notable feature of the Swedish landscape is that it's around 69% forested, one of the highest percentages in the world. Places as far north as Sweden are normally less densely forested, but Sweden is influenced by the Gulf Stream current, which flows all the way up from the Gulf of Mexico, giving Sweden a much warmer climate than other areas at a similar latitude, allowing for dense forest. Stockholm has an average January temperature of -1 degree Celsius, while there are places in North America or Siberia that are further south but have January averages that are 25 degrees colder. Sweden is also very active in reforestation, planting trees to replace those it cuts down. Sweden is politically divided into 21 regions, called counties, which are the top-level division of the country. But historically and culturally, Sweden's 25 old provinces are still important. The provinces of Sweden can be placed into three groups: southern, central, and northern. Southern Sweden, or Götaland. The southern provinces of Sweden, collectively known as Götaland, are the breadbasket of the country, as the land is flat with rolling hills and the soil well suited to agriculture. The southernmost part of Götaland, Skåne, or Scania in English, did not become a part of Sweden until the 17th century, and as a result retained some differences from the rest of Sweden, such as its regional dialect of Swedish, skånska, which is closer to Danish. Skåne is where Sweden's third largest city is located, Malmö. The second largest city in Sweden is Gothenburg, which is also located in southern Sweden, in the province of Västergötland. The southern province of Småland is where one of Sweden's most internationally known companies, IKEA, was founded. Southern Sweden is also where you'll find Sweden's two largest islands, Gotland and Öland. The largest city on Gotland, Visby, has an incredibly well-preserved medieval old city, all of which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Central Sweden, or Svealand. The central Swedish landscape is more rugged than the south, with many small mountains and deeper valleys. Many of Sweden's 22,600 lakes are found here, such as the lakes Vänern and Vättern. Central Sweden is home to Stockholm, the capital and largest city in Sweden, with a population of close to 1 million people, and over 2.4 million in the metropolitan area. It was founded on 14 large islands, and is often called the Venice of the Baltic because of its many canals. Those 14 islands are part of Stockholm Archipelago, which consists of around 24,000 islands. Northern Sweden, or Norrland. Northern Sweden comprises half of Sweden's area, but is home to less than 10% of its population. The reason for Norrland's sparse population is its climate and landscape. It's the most mountainous part of the country, and where you'll find the Scandinavian mountains. Sweden's highest peak, Kebnekaise, is located there. Being further away from the moderating effects of the sea, Norrland is by far the coldest part of Sweden. Temperatures below -20 are common here during the winter. But those willing to brave the cold weather are rewarded by the stunning natural phenomena. It's one of the best places to see the northern lights. And in early summer, there's the midnight sun, days with 24 hours of sunlight. Above the Arctic Circle, this lasts for weeks at a time. Then in the winter, there's the polar night, days when the sun never rises above the horizon. This lasts for as long as 28 days in Sweden's most northern towns. Popular places to enjoy the beauty of Norrland are the Aurora Sky Station in Abisko, with its spectacular panoramas, the Kungsleden, a 450-kilometer hiking trail that cuts through the Scandinavian mountains, and Laponia, a natural area which was made a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1996 for its outstanding state of preservation. The population of northern Sweden is concentrated along the coast in cities like Luleå and Umeå. The north is also home to the Sami people, a distinct ethno-linguistic group that spans the Arctic areas of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and northwestern Russia. Northern and central Sweden are rich in natural resources such as iron, gold, and zinc. In the 20th century, the exploitation of these resources helped Sweden achieve high levels of economic growth, and Sweden has simultaneously made impressive moves towards sustainability and environmental protection, at least compared to most countries. But even Sweden's move towards a green economy has sparked controversy, as many green industries are being developed in northern Sweden, where they can disrupt the traditional Sami lands and way of life. Sweden is a constitutional monarchy, with a monarch who is head of state and a prime minister who is head of government, and who must keep the confidence of the parliament, or riksdag, to stay in office. Swedish politics might seem a little chaotic because there are numerous parties in the riksdag, with none of them having a majority. That's because Sweden follows a system of proportional representation, meaning that the percentage of seats a party gets in the riksdag is more or less equal to the percentage of the national vote that the party got. But to prevent too much fragmentation, only parties with at least 4% of the national vote are represented. Sweden's first female prime minister, Magdalena Andersson, actually had to resign less than 12 hours after taking the position because her narrow coalition failed to pass a budget, but she was reappointed a few days later. Politics aside, Sweden is not known as a chaotic place. It's known for the serenity of its natural landscapes, its commitment to sustainability, its support for human rights, and openness to those fleeing violence and persecution. If you're from Sweden, what's something else you want people to know about your country? And to other people? If you've ever visited Sweden, or if you'd like to go there, what is it about Sweden that attracts you? It experiences constant volcanic eruptions, it has the world's northernmost capital city, and you can experience days when the sun never sets, or never rises. Today we're talking about Iceland. Iceland is a country located in the North Atlantic Ocean. Despite its isolated location, Iceland is normally considered part of Europe for its historical and cultural connections with Scandinavia. The main island of Iceland, which makes up most of the country, is 101,826 square kilometers in size, which makes it Europe's second largest island after the island of Britain, which is actually more than twice as large. As an island nation, Iceland does not have any land borders with other countries, but it shares maritime borders, as well as close cultural and historical ties with Greenland and the Faroe Islands, both of which are autonomous countries within the Kingdom of Denmark. Iceland is a sparsely populated country, with a population of only around 380,000 people, the vast majority of whom descend from settlers from Scandinavia. While there may have been some Irish monastic communities on the island prior to the Vikings, Iceland's recorded history begins during the Viking Age, which lasted from the year 793 to 1066. In the year 870, the first circumnavigation of Iceland took place, meaning people sailed around it, and in the year 874, permanent Norse settlement began, with Ingólfur Arnarson being the first settler. At least he's traditionally thought to be the first. What was the island of Iceland like when the first Norse settlers arrived? Well, despite its isolation and desolation, to the original Scandinavian settlers it must have seemed pretty familiar to their original homes, at least in certain ways. Iceland's coastline features many fjords with fine harbors. The climate, while cold, is moderated, especially along the coast, by the influence of the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf Stream, as is the case on the Scandinavian peninsula. Iceland was also fairly densely forested when the original settlers arrived, with about 30% of the island covered in trees. Unfortunately, thin soils made the island vulnerable to deforestation, and now the island is mostly treeless. But at the time, it was forested like the Scandinavian peninsula. But some of the inland parts of the island look nothing like anywhere else on the planet. The interior of Iceland is covered in volcanoes, around 130 of them, and there's a major eruption every 5 years on average. The landscape is covered with recently cool lava fields, as well as geothermal hot springs. About 10 to 15% of the country is covered in glaciers. Iceland's stunning landscape is the result of its geography. The island sits along the mid-Atlantic ridge, which separates the North American plate from the European plate. Underneath Iceland is a hot spot, a place in the Earth's crust where magma from the mantle breaks through to the surface. This hot spot is responsible for Iceland's volcanic activity, which is responsible for the formation of Iceland itself. As you can imagine, life was not easy for the early Viking arrivals, but they persevered and governed themselves for over 300 years. The Assembly of Iceland, the Althing, or Alþingi, was founded in the year 930. It's sometimes said to be the longest-lasting parliament in the world. But the fact that it was abolished in the year 1800 and wasn't re-established for 44 years kind of puts a dent in that claim. A period of civil strife began in Iceland in the mid-13th century, and in the year 1262, Iceland's chieftains asked for Norwegian protection under an agreement called the Old Covenant. This began a long period of foreign rule over the island. As a result, Iceland became a constituent part of the Kingdom of Norway, and as a part of Norway, it later became part of the Kingdom of Denmark-Norway, at first as part of the Kalmar Union, which included Sweden. After the Napoleonic Wars, Denmark lost Norway to Sweden, but it retained Iceland under Danish rule. During the 19th century, Icelandic nationalists began demanding autonomy from Denmark. This was granted over the course of the late 19th century. In 1918, Iceland was granted sovereignty, meaning Iceland became an independent country, but it still had some ceremonial ties to Denmark, including the Danish monarch as its head of state. After Denmark was occupied by Nazi Germany in 1940, British and American troops occupied Iceland to keep it from falling into German hands. Iceland's leaders were opposed to this because it violated their intention to remain neutral. Well, at least that's what they said publicly. Privately, they might have been quite happy about the extra security, not to mention that the British and American presence gave Iceland a huge economic boost, turning it from a poor country into a wealthy one. But despite the benefits of the foreign presence, Iceland wanted to be independent, and in 1944, Iceland overwhelmingly voted to become a republic, independent of Denmark and any other country. Even so, since the end of the war, Iceland has pursued cooperation with the US as well as Europe, joining the European Economic Area in 1994. Iceland is made up of 8 political regions, but geographically it can be divided somewhat differently into a number of regions. I know that some people will say these regions are wrong, but this is just one way of dividing the country up geographically. Southwest Iceland is dominated by the capital city Reykjavik and its surroundings. Around 2/3 of Iceland's 380,000 people live in this region. Reykjavik is a lively city for its size, with many festivals and events. Because it's the world's northernmost capital city and fairly close to the Arctic Circle, like all of Iceland, it experiences the midnight sun in summer, when the sun is at least partially visible 24 hours a day. Imagine going out for a beer late at night in this scene, which feels more like early in the morning. Oh, and now that I'm on the topic of beer, did you know that beer was banned in Iceland until March 1st, 1989? Well, beer with more than 2.25% alcohol, that is. Now March 1st is known as Beer Day to celebrate the repeal of that strange restriction. Sorry, back to the regions of Iceland. One special place in southwest Iceland is the Blue Lagoon, a large outdoor geothermal spa, one of the most popular places to visit in the country. A significant portion of Iceland is covered by glaciers, and that includes those in western Iceland, such as Snæfellsjökull, a glacier-capped volcano in the national park of the same name. Further up the coast, the West Fjords are the part of Iceland most exposed to the harsh winds of the Atlantic. Here the landscape is rugged and very dramatic with glaciers, mountains, and long fjords. The West Fjords region contains some of the most remote parts of Iceland, and there are only 7,000 people living in the entire region. Another remote region, and one that's difficult to navigate, is the interior region. The largest glaciers in Iceland are found in this region, or partly in this region. Glacial rivers that stem from these glaciers flow towards northern Iceland. Because of this, there are a number of dramatic waterfalls there, such as the appropriately named Goðafoss, meaning waterfall of the gods. The largest settlement in northern Iceland, and also anywhere in Iceland outside of Reykjavik, is Akureyri. Despite being near the Arctic Circle, it has a relatively mild climate, and its fjord and harbor are ice-free year-round. This is one of the reasons it's a relatively large settlement. And by that I mean, well, 20,000 people. Hence the phrase relatively large for Iceland. Southern Iceland lacks the fjords that characterize the rest of the country. Many important sites can be found in southern Iceland, especially Þingvellir National Park, about 40 kilometers east of Reykjavik. Not only is this the site of the original Althing, it also sits right in the Rift Valley of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, in other words, right where the North American and Eurasian plates meet. Iceland is the only place in the world where the Mid-Atlantic Range is above sea level. East Iceland is home to the East Fjords, a 120-kilometer stretch of coastline punctuated by fjords surrounded by magnificent jagged cliffs. It's also home to the Hengifoss waterfall, one of the highest waterfalls in Iceland, with a drop of 128.5 meters. The highest glacier in Iceland is Múrsárfoss, located in Vatnajökull National Park, where Vatnajökull, the largest glacier in Iceland, is found. This glacier only just appeared in recent years, when an outlet glacier of the Vatnajökull glacier began to melt. Iceland's stunning otherworldly landscapes mean that tourism has become one of the most important parts of its economy, especially in the years following the devastating financial crisis of 2008, with over 1 million visitors a year, almost 3 times the resident population. This definitely helped Iceland's economic recovery, though it also turned out to be a vulnerability during the COVID-19 restrictions that cut off tourism completely, but hopefully that's all behind us. Fishing also continues to be one of Iceland's major industries, which employs 5% of the workforce directly and up to another 15% indirectly. The importance of tourism, as well as their relative proximity to the UK, means that Icelanders are generally very proficient in English. Many sources claim that 98% of Icelanders can speak English. But of course, the official language of Iceland is Icelandic, quite a conservative language that has changed relatively little over the last 1200 years. To learn more about Icelandic, check out this video I made about it on my other channel, GEOfocus. Something related to that linguistic conservatism is that first names in Iceland must be selected from a predetermined list of Icelandic names, or otherwise be approved by the Icelandic Naming Committee. As for surnames, patronymic names are used in Iceland. Instead of a last name, Icelanders have a second name based on one of their parents' names, usually the father's, with the suffix son or dóttir. So if your name is Jón and you had a son, his surname would be Jónsson. And if you had a daughter, her surname would be Jónsdóttir. This was done not only in Iceland, but in Scandinavia as well. But the other countries abandoned this system a long time ago, while Iceland maintains it. Though conservative when it comes to things like language and names, in other ways Icelandic society has been more progressive than most of the world. In 1980, Vigdís Finnbogadóttir became president of Iceland, giving Iceland a female head of state before most countries in the world. Around 50% of Iceland's parliament is female, and the country scores at or near the top of most measurements of gender equality. Iceland's parliament legalized registered partnerships in 1996, conferring almost all benefits of marriage on same-sex couples, and it legalized same-sex marriage in 2010 by a unanimous vote. Reykjavik's world-famous Pride Parade is attended by as many as 100,000 people. That's in a country with fewer than 400,000 people. While Icelandic society is not perfect, it has certainly done well despite its isolation and largely remote physical landscape. Iceland scores very high on social well-being indicators. Around 66% of Icelanders are satisfied with their lives, 75% think their lives will get better in the future, and 98% said they knew someone who they could rely on in time of need. Which shows that social isolation is less of a problem there than it is elsewhere, despite the isolation of the country itself. If you're Icelandic, what would you like people around the world to know about your country? And other people, would you like to visit Iceland if you had the chance? If so, what is it about the country that attracts you? Today's topic is a big topic because the Russian Federation is a big country. In fact, it's the largest country in the world. Its total land area is over 17 million square kilometers, stretching from Europe all the way to East Asia. It's home to over 142 million people, 35 official languages at the regional level, and over 100 minority languages are spoken daily. The Russian Federation is composed of 85 divisions called federal subjects, of which there are several types with varying levels of autonomy, but all of them are ultimately under the control of the executive government, which as of 2022 is the administration of President Vladimir Putin. 2 of those 85 federal subjects are located in Crimea and became federal subjects in 2014. According to Russia, that is. They aren't recognized as part of Russia by most countries. Russia is a transcontinental country extending over a vast area of 2 continents, Europe and Asia. Being the largest country in the world in terms of area, it's no surprise that Russia ties China for sharing borders with the largest number of countries, 14 countries in total. They are, from west to east, Norway, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, China, and North Korea. But wait, that's only 12 countries. Right, don't forget about Kaliningrad. This exclave of Russia borders Poland and Lithuania, bringing us to a total of 14 countries. Most of Russia's 140 million people live in the western part of the country, near the Baltic Sea to the north and Caspian Sea to the south, and in the south along the border with Kazakhstan. This is in large part because those areas are the most hospitable. The capital city of Russia, Moscow, is home to 12.5 million people in the city proper and over 20 million people in the metro area, making it the most populous metro area in Europe. The second and third most populous cities are St. Petersburg at 5.5 million and Novosibirsk at 1.6 million, respectively. The Asian parts of Russia, meaning the areas east of the Ural Mountains, are part of the region of Siberia, much of which experiences very cold temperatures. In fact, Siberia is home to the coldest major city in the world, Yakutsk. Yakutsk is located in the far east of the country, in the Sakha Republic, a federal subject of Russia. Located about 450 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle, Yakutsk has a yearly average temperature of minus 8.8 degrees Celsius, and at the height of winter in January, the temperature averages minus 38.6 degrees Celsius. That's the average, meaning it gets colder at night. A large percentage of the population here are ethnically Yakut and speak the Yakut language, a Turkic language, in addition to Russian, of course. About 81% of Russia's population is ethnically Russian, while about 19% of the people belong to ethnic minorities. The Turkic Tatar people form the largest minority, and there are others such as Ukrainians, Chechens, other Turkic peoples aside from Tatars, and others. The sole official language at the national level is Russian, but as I mentioned before, there are 35 languages that are official in different federal subjects. Russia is a largely Slavic nation, but Slavic people were not the first people to inhabit Russia. When East Slavic people migrated to present-day Western Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, they assimilated Baltic and Finnic peoples that were already present there. There were also Varangians, Norsemen who had migrated south from the area of eastern Sweden. The history of Russia, and its name, is said to begin with the establishment of the state of Rus in the year 862, with its capital in the city of Novgorod. It was ruled by the Varangians from Scandinavia, but the population was mainly Slavic. In the year 882, they conquered the city of Kiev, in present-day Ukraine, uniting the East Slavs under one regime, which historians later referred to as Kievan Rus. It ruled most of what is now Western Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus for several hundred years, but eventually broke apart as a result of the Mongol invasions of the 13th century. Moscow was a mostly insignificant town until the 13th century when the invasions in the south forced people to migrate further north towards the city. This gave rise to the Grand Duchy of Moscow, which can be seen as a precursor of modern Russia, though it was still under indirect control of the Mongols until 1480. It was in that year that the ruler of Moscow, Ivan III, also known as Ivan the Great, defeated the Mongols. In the 1550s, his grandson, Ivan IV, also known as Ivan the Terrible, became Russia's first Tsar, like an emperor. In the following centuries, Russia expanded eastward into much of what is today part of Russia. In 1917, the exploitation of the rural peasant class and industrial working class under the Tsar led to his overthrow in the Russian Revolution. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, established the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, with Russia as its most central component. For the next 71 years, Russia and the rest of the USSR were ruled by one party, the Communist Party. During World War II, the USSR fought alongside the Allies against Nazi Germany, but this alliance ended after 1945, as both the USA and the USSR sought to protect their interests and increase their influence throughout Europe and the rest of the world. Their rivalry, known as the Cold War, continued for several decades until 1991, when the Soviet Union broke up and the Federation of Russia was born. The most widespread religion in Russia is Russian Orthodox Christianity. According to one 2017 survey, 71% of the population is Russian Orthodox. But according to other surveys, it seems that around a third of those people are agnostic and only nominally Russian Orthodox. and 15% of the people identify as atheist. When Russia was under the rule of the Soviet Union, religion was fiercely stamped out, which greatly reduced the number of believers in the country. But since the fall of the Soviet Union, there has been a revival of interest in religion, with a rising number of believers. There's a significant Muslim population at 10%, found mainly in the southern regions of Russia. You've probably heard of Khabib, or Khabib Nurmagomedov, one of the top MMA fighters of all time. He's a Muslim from the Republic of Dagestan, one of the federal subjects of Russia. There are also other minority religions such as neo-paganism, Tengrism, and Buddhism. When the Soviet Union declined and fell, a renaissance of Russian folk culture also began. Many traditional holidays have regained popularity, even amongst young people. The oldest of these folk holidays, Maslenitsa, marks the end of winter. Another icon of Russian culture, this time quite literally, is the Russian icon. These are typically small paintings on wood found throughout homes in Russia, and larger ones in churches and monasteries. These icons are part of an ancient painting tradition that dates back to the year 988, during the Rus people's conversion to Orthodox Christianity. Another figurative icon of Russian culture is the Matryoshka doll, a type of doll which is opened up to reveal another doll. Then you open up that doll to reveal another doll. There are normally 6 dolls or more. Russia is also known for Russian folk dancing, in particular the Khorovod dance and the Plyaska dance. And Russia has a rich history of literature, with writers such as Leo Tolstoy, Fyodor Dostoevsky, and Alexander Pushkin being mentioned among the literary greats of all time. The Russian landscape varies greatly, and it has a large variety of natural resources, including major deposits of oil, natural gas, coal, and others. Russia is the second largest oil-producing country after the United States. Because of its size, Russia is usually divided into several natural zones. The steppe, or plains zone, consists of treeless grassy plains, interspersed with the occasional mountain range or river. The Russian steppe makes up most of southwestern Russia and is Russia's main agricultural region due to its fertile conditions. As of early 2022, Russia is the world's largest exporter of wheat, and it's the second largest exporter of sunflower seeds after Ukraine. The taiga zone consists of subarctic coniferous forests, which cover the majority of Russia's land. It stretches approximately 5,800 kilometers from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. Among the animals able to survive in this harsh environment are moose, reindeer, and brown bears. Bears are revered in Russia and considered a symbol of the country. The Siberian tiger, the largest cat in the world, is indigenous to the taiga of eastern Russia. That's right, you can find the Siberian tiger in the taiga. This endangered tiger can grow to be over 3 meters long and weigh up to 300 kilograms. In the eastern part of the taiga zone, there's a tiny 3 by 6 kilometer desert called the Chara Sands, which is surrounded by tundra, mountains, river, and swamps, with no transition zone. This is very unusual for a desert. Russia also has a semi-arid desert area north of the Caspian Sea, and there are also Arctic deserts on Russia's most northern islands, at the northern extreme of the country's tundra. The icy Arctic tundra lies to the north of the taiga and comprises about 10% of Russia's land. It consists of land with few trees, normally covered in permafrost for most of the year. It serves as a habitat for animals like Asiatic black bears and polar bears, snow leopards, Arctic foxes, and reindeer. Russia's tundra is home to numerous ethnicities who have traditionally engaged in reindeer herding. There's also volcanic activity in Russia, in particular in the Kamchatka Peninsula and the Kuril Islands. Mount Klyuchevskaya, located in Kamchatka, is Russia's tallest and most active volcano, having erupted in 2007 and 2010. It stands at 4,835 meters tall. The Kuril Islands are also a source of dispute between Russia and Japan, with Japan claiming the southern Kuril Islands as part of its territory. They were occupied by Russia in 1945 at the end of World War II. As such a huge country, there's so much we could say about Russia, but hopefully this video gave you a bit of an idea about just how big it is and just how diverse it is in terms of its geography, climate, and even people. There are many people who have heard about Russia mainly in the domain of politics and international relations, but hopefully you learned a thing or two about other aspects of the country. Now over to you. What's something about Russia that you were surprised by while watching this video? And if you're from Russia, what else would you like people to know about your country? When you hear the country name Spain, I bet some of you imagine bullfights, the running of the bulls, or flamenco dancing. Sure, those things exist in Spain, but there's a whole lot more to learn about the country than that. So, let's go! Spain is a country predominantly located in southwestern Europe. It occupies the majority of the Iberian Peninsula, which it shares with Portugal, the small Principality of Andorra, the British Overseas Territory of Gibraltar, and a small part of France. The Spanish-Portuguese border is the longest continuous border in the European Union at 1,214 kilometers. The total land area of Spain is 505,992 square kilometers, which makes it slightly smaller than France and slightly bigger than the US state of California. The country's physical geography is characterized by mountains, the Meseta Plateau, large river valleys, and a long coastline along the Mediterranean Sea to the southeast, as well as the Atlantic Ocean to the west and north. In the northeast, along the border with France, are the Pyrenees Mountains. Further west are the Cantabrian Mountains. Southern Spain contains the tallest mountain in continental Spain, Mulhacén, in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. There is, however, a higher mountain called Tede in the Canary Islands, which are not part of continental Spain. So, where are they? You might be surprised to learn that some of Spain's territory is geographically located in Africa. These territories are the last remnants of the once global Spanish Empire. Spain's African territories are the Canary Islands, which I mentioned before, the city enclaves of Ceuta and Melilla, which are located on the Moroccan coast, two small groups of islands off the coast of Morocco, and Peñón de Belez de la Gomera. Peñón de Belez de la Gomera also used to be an island until 1934 when a storm caused sand to pile up between the island and mainland Morocco, linking them together. The resulting 85-meter-long border is the shortest international border in the world. But back to continental Spain for a minute. Much of central Spain consists of a high plateau known as Meseta, or Meseta Central. While not as high as the mountain ranges, the Meseta is between 500 meters and 1 kilometer above sea level. The capital of Spain, Madrid, lies in this region and sits at an altitude of 650 meters above sea level. The Meseta Plateau is crisscrossed by numerous river valleys. These include some of Spain's largest rivers, the Tagus, Duero, Guadiana, and Guadalquivir, along with their tributaries. Other major rivers outside of the Meseta include the Miño in Galicia and the Ebro. Hey bro, what's up? Yeah, those laughs are real because I make funny jokes. The climate of Spain is influenced by its geography. The north of the country has a moderate oceanic climate because of its proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, and it receives rainfall year-round. The Meseta Central has a more continental climate, with higher temperature fluctuations than any other parts of Western Europe because of its high elevation and distance from major bodies of water. The areas of Spain which border the Mediterranean see a more typical Mediterranean climate, with cool wet winters and hot dry summers. The farther south you go, the more extreme summer temperatures get, while Barcelona, in the north, usually sees summer highs in the high 20s or low 30s. In the southern city of Seville, the average July temperature is 36 degrees Celsius, and the record temperature is 46.6 degrees Celsius. I guess that makes sense considering that southern Spain is just a stone's throw away from Africa. Spain is divided into 17 autonomous regions, plus the two special cities of Ceuta and Melilla. The modern regions reflect the various historical kingdoms that existed in what later became a unified Spain. We can't examine all of the regions in this video, but here are a few of them. Spain's most populous autonomous region is Andalusia. Its name comes from Arabic al-Andalus, which refers to areas of the Iberian Peninsula that were once under Muslim rule. Andalusia was a battleground between Christian and Muslim forces until 1492, in the final stages of the Christian reconquest, or Reconquista. The Catholic rulers built many monumental churches in territories they reconquered, which can be seen in the cities of Seville and Granada. However, the region also contains spectacular Islamic architecture that reminds us of Al-Andalus, such as the Alhambra Palace in Granada. With 7.6 million inhabitants, Catalonia is the second most populous region in Spain. The population is densely concentrated on the coast, where you will find Barcelona, Spain's second most populous city. Barcelona is not only a major tourist destination famed for its beaches and modernist architecture, but it's also a major financial, cultural, and transportation center. Spain's longest river, the Ebro, reaches the Mediterranean in Catalonia. In Catalonia, a regional language called Catalan is spoken alongside Spanish. Catalan is also spoken in the regions of the Balearic Islands and Valencia, though many Valencians consider their variety a separate language and refer to it as Valencian. There might be lots of comments in the comments section saying, "We don't speak Catalan," with anywhere between 3 and 57 exclamation marks. Another region of Spain which has its own distinct regional language is Galicia, where the Galician language is spoken. It's more closely related to Portuguese than it is to Castilian Spanish. Portugal actually began as a county of the Kingdom of Galicia before it became an independent kingdom and expanded southward into much of its current territory. There's also the Basque Country. The remote Basque Country's rugged terrain has kept its population relatively isolated and safe from outside invasion. As a result, it maintains a distinct Basque culture and language, though only a minority of ethnic Basques are proficient in the language today. As you can see, in Spain, regional identities often coexist with the national one, and about a quarter of the people speak a regional language as their first language, though they speak Spanish from a young age as well. Another of Spain's regions is the autonomous community of Madrid, where the capital city Madrid is located. The first documented history of the city goes back to the 9th century when it was under Moorish rule. Then it came under Christian control in the 11th century as part of the Reconquista. It was made the capital of Spain in 1561, after which it began to grow into a huge city. Today, it's the second largest city in the European Union, with 3.4 million people in the city proper and a metropolitan population of 6.7 million. Unlike many European capitals, it's not located along the coast or on a major navigable river. Madrid was made the capital partly because it lies in the center of the country, but apparently also because the monarchy enjoyed the hunting there. I guess we all have our priorities. Spain has a population of 47 million, which is around the same as Kenya, Argentina, or Colombia. Around 84% of the residents are Spanish citizens, while the other 16% are non-citizens living in Spain. The largest sources of the foreign population are North African countries, former Spanish colonies of Latin America, China, and other states in the European Union. One thing that historically unified the different peoples of Spain was the Catholic faith. Well, since the Reconquista, that is. Today, Catholicism is by far the most common religion, but many Catholics are non-practicing. The influence of the Catholic religion can still be seen during festivals, like the dramatic processions that occur during Holy Week leading up to Easter. Another thing that unifies much of Spain is a love of football, or soccer for you North Americans. Spain's two most popular football teams, Real Madrid and FC Barcelona, are among the most popular sports teams in the world, and are each valued at over $4 billion. These teams are an important part of Spain's cultural influence throughout the world. Until the 1950s, Spain's economy was primarily agricultural. However, the economy developed rapidly in the second half of the 20th century. Today, agriculture employs just 5% of the population. Other important sectors of the economy are manufacturing and financial services, as Spain is an important financial center of both the EU and the larger Spanish-speaking world. Tourism is another important component of the economy. In 2019, Spain saw 83.5 million international arrivals, making it the second most visited country in the world. Spain obviously attracts so many visitors because it's a fascinating place full of diverse landscapes, amazing historical monuments and architecture, and the diversity of its regions and cultures. Now, over to you. For people from Spain, what's something you want other people to know about your country? And to everyone else, what's something in this video that you found surprising or interesting? Leave your answers in the comments down below. If you're interested in the Spanish language or regional languages of Spain, check out my videos about them on the GEOfocus channel. You can find the links in the description. Spain and Portugal are two European nations that share a lot of things in common. They're both located on the Iberian Peninsula. They speak closely related languages, Spanish and Portuguese. They have shared historical experiences like Moorish rule and the Reconquista, and they both love football. Despite these similarities, they're very distinct countries, and people from either one might be moderately annoyed if you mix them up. So let's focus on some of the differences and avoid alienating our Iberian friends. Number 1. Size. At just over 500,000 square kilometers, Spain is over 5 times bigger than Portugal and occupies around 85% of the Iberian Peninsula. Portugal is 92,212 square kilometers in size and occupies around 15% of the peninsula. This difference in size is closely mirrored by the population size of the two countries. Spain has over 47 million people, whereas Portugal has only about 10 million people. Spain has a longer coastline that extends along both the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, while all of Portugal's shorter coastline is on the Atlantic Ocean. This makes Portugal a bit of an outlier among southern European countries, though it's generally considered a Mediterranean country anyway. Spain's larger size gives it more diversity in terms of landscape and climate. Northern Spain gets a lot of rain and is densely forested, whereas southern Spain is Europe's hottest region with 45-degree days in summer. Portugal lacks these extremes. It doesn't get as rainy or as hot as its neighbor Spain, and I mean at the extremes. Number 2, Spain also has more cultural and linguistic diversity than Portugal. For example, in Spain's autonomous community of Galicia, many of the people speak Galician as their native language, which is a separate language from Spanish, very closely related to Portuguese in fact. The Basque Country is also home to a regional language, the Basque language. While spoken by a minority in the Basque Country today, the Basque language is an important part of the area's history and culture. In Catalonia, the Catalan language is spoken, alongside Spanish. It's also spoken in Valencia and the Balearic Islands, though some Valencians insist that their variety of Catalan is a separate language because of their distinct identity. There's also Aranese, a variety of Occitan, which is closely related to Catalan. These languages are all co-official with Spanish in their respective autonomous communities, and there are others that are not official languages but are recognized by the government. Astur-Leonese and Aragonese. Portugal has one official language at the national level, Portuguese, and Portuguese is the main language for almost all of the country. Another language, Mirandese, a variety of Astur-Leonese, is official at the regional level. Portuguese Sign Language is also recognized by the government. There are a couple of other languages spoken by small numbers of people, and Portuguese is spoken with different regional accents, but there's less linguistic variation in Portugal than there is in Spain. Number 3, autonomy and separatism. The cultural and linguistic differences in Spain have a political impact as well. I'm sure this is an oversimplification, but many people in the different communities feel that they are distinct from other Spaniards and want recognition for their distinctness. For some people, this means autonomy and the recognition of their language and culture, and for other people, this means independence from Spain. The main example at the moment is Catalonia, where somewhere around 40% or 50% of the population supports independence, but this depends on the survey or vote you look at. There's a separatist movement in the Basque Country as well, but its support is much more limited, around 17%, because the Basque Country has fiscal autonomy and keeps most of its own tax revenue, and that helps keep the population relatively satisfied with Spanish rule. Portugal doesn't have any significant separatist movements. Unlike Spain, the different parts of Portugal never governed themselves as independent kingdoms, and there's a more united sense of identity amongst Portuguese people. Number 4, Spain and Portugal have different colonial histories. In the early 15th century, the Kingdom of Portugal and the Kingdom of Castile, which later became part of Spain, began exploring the Atlantic Ocean to avoid trade competition with other Mediterranean powers. This led to the establishment of overseas empires, but the areas they explored and later settled were different. Following the path of its long Atlantic coastline, Portugal went down south, down the African coast. Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias reached the Cape of Good Hope in 1488, and Vasco da Gama explored the Indian Ocean in 1498. Here, Portugal encountered the already well-known trade routes and empires of the Indian Ocean, such as the Ottoman and Safavid empires. Spain tried to avoid competing with Portugal by sailing across the Atlantic, believing they could reach Asia. Of course, they didn't reach Asia. Well, not yet anyway. Instead, Christopher Columbus, sailing under the Spanish flag, even though he was from Genoa, Italy, quote-unquote, discovered the Americas, the Caribbean to be more specific. Of course, he didn't actually discover them, because there were already people there, but his travels there made Europeans aware of the Americas. The Portuguese eventually made it to the Americas too, but treaties between Spain and Portugal ended up dividing the world into a Spanish zone and a Portuguese zone. As a result, Spain and Portugal have left their imprint on different countries. This is why most countries in South America are Spanish-speaking, but Brazil is Portuguese-speaking, for instance. Number 5, time. What do I mean by time? How are they different in terms of time? Despite being on roughly the same longitude, Spain and Portugal use different time zones. Portugal, aside from the Azores, which are 1 hour behind, uses the same time zone as the UK, UTC 0. Spain, on the other hand, uses UTC plus 1, like most of Western Europe and Central Europe, even though in some ways it might make more sense if it didn't. In the summertime, solar noon, meaning the time when the sun is directly above you in the center of the sky, is at 2:30 p.m. in parts of western Spain, rather than, well, noon. This time zone's oddness might be partly responsible for Spain's habit of eating and working much later in the day than Portuguese people do. Portuguese people have lunch around 12, while in Spain the typical lunch break is from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. This was historically a nap time known as the siesta, though these days not everyone takes a nap. It depends on your job and where you work. Then they have dinner around 9:30 p.m., but that's actually not that much later than in Portugal. They tend to eat dinner around 9 p.m., so take this with a grain of salt. Number 6. Portugal is more formal. Another difference is that Portugal is more formal than Spain. Both the Spanish and Portuguese languages have both informal and formal you pronouns, but the formal you is used more in Portugal. Portuguese people may also address each other by their professional titles in professional settings, like calling each other doctor or lawyer or engineer, although this practice is declining. Spanish society can be quite informal, especially among young people. Spaniards increasingly use the informal you with strangers, as long as they're around the same age, and the use of titles in professional contexts isn't as common as it is in Portugal. Number 7. Spain is a monarchy, while Portugal is a republic. Spain and Portugal have different forms of government. Portugal became a republic in 1910, abolishing its monarchy. Portugal's system of government changed a few times over the course of the 20th century, but it has never brought back its monarchy. Spain is a constitutional monarchy in which the monarch is a ceremonial head of state. Spain's a little unusual amongst European monarchies in that it re-established its monarchy in 1975, after a period as a republic under the leadership of Francisco Franco. As of 2022, the current monarch of Spain is Felipe VI. Those are just a few differences between Spain and Portugal that stood out to me. Obviously, there are many more, including lots of subtle and not so subtle elements of their lifestyle and culture. If you're Spanish or Portuguese, what differences do you notice between the two countries? And for the rest of the audience, were there any differences in the video that surprised you? Leave your answers in the comments down below. Don't forget to smash the like button or you'll be permanently banned from the nations of Spain and Portugal. Maybe. It's widely considered the cradle of Western civilization, it has the longest coastline in Europe, and it has an autonomous zone which no women are allowed to visit. These are just 3 of the things that you're going to learn about Greece. The country we're going to focus on today is Greece, though Greeks refer to it as Hellas, and they refer to themselves as Ellines. Most Greeks are very proud of their country and its history, and that's for good reason. Ancient Greece is widely considered to be the cradle of Western civilization, and many of its innovations and contributions still have a big effect on our lives today. It was the birthplace of democracy, even though it was only democracy for some. It gave us the first genuine alphabet, and it gave us the Olympic Games. Ancient Greece also made huge contributions to the mathematics and the sciences, as well as philosophy. Not to mention that Greek mythology, scripture, and architecture are what come to mind for many Westerners when they think of the ancient world. Ancient Greece was not a single country, but rather a civilization with many different political entities, including a large number of city-states, with each one referred to as a polis, which means city in Greek. 3 Greek city-states that you might have heard of are Athens, Sparta, and Byzantium, which later became Constantinople, then Istanbul. But there were over 1,000 Greek city-states. All of them were united for some time under the Kingdom of Macedonia, and they later became part of the Roman Empire. But Greek remained the language of the eastern part of the Roman Empire, and later its successor, the Byzantine Empire, which controlled much of the eastern Mediterranean region and beyond. That obviously means that Greece is a Mediterranean country. It's located in southeastern Europe on the southern portion of the Balkan Peninsula. It shares borders with Albania, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria to the north, and Turkey to the east. Its islands are situated in the Ionian Sea and the Aegean Sea. In terms of land, it's not a huge country. It's the 95th largest country in the world, with a total land area of 131,957 square kilometers. That makes it slightly bigger than Nicaragua and slightly smaller than Tajikistan or Alabama State in the USA. But that's only its land area. 17% of that land area is made up of Greece's islands, so if you include all of its territorial waters between the islands, it's a lot bigger. Greece is one of the most mountainous countries in Europe, with over 80% of its land covered by mountains. The country's highest mountain is Mount Olympus, with an elevation of 2,918 meters. In Greek mythology, it's the home of the Greek gods and the site of Zeus's throne. There's also the Pindos mountain range, an extension of the Dinaric Alps. It extends 160 kilometers and has an elevation of over 2,600 meters at its highest point. The striking mountain terrain makes the Pindos Mountains and its trails a popular destination for hikers. Most notable is Vikos Gorge, the deepest gorge in the world relative to its width. The Greek landscape is also dotted with olive trees, as many Mediterranean countries are. There are 170 million olive trees there. Think about how many that is, 170 million. It's no wonder that Greece is the third largest olive producer in the world, producing 2.2 million tons of olives each year. It also has the widest variety of different types of olives in the world. As a Mediterranean country, it's not surprising that Greece mainly has a Mediterranean climate, with mild, wet winters and hot, dry summers. In the capital city Athens, temperatures sometimes exceed a blistering 40 degrees Celsius, but in the winter, the average daily high temperature is more like 14 degrees Celsius, and of course it's cooler at night. It even snows in Athens a couple of times each year, though heavy snow is quite rare. In the northern mountainous areas, winters get much colder, and it more commonly drops below 0 degrees Celsius. Greece is divided into 13 administrative regions. However, there are 9 traditional geographic regions, which used to be the official regions until the 1987 administrative reform. Some notable regions are Macedonia. Macedonia is the largest region, and roughly corresponds to the historical region of Macedonia. It shouldn't be confused with North Macedonia, which is a whole different country, though the ancient kingdom of Macedonia included some territory across the border in that country, and both countries claim the legacy of ancient Macedonia and its greatest king, Alexander the Great, who grew the kingdom into an empire stretching all the way to Afghanistan. Alexander the Great was born in Pella, which is located in Greek Macedonia, and was the capital city of ancient Macedonia for a period of time. It's located 39 kilometers north of Thessaloniki, which is currently the largest city in Macedonia and the second largest in all of Greece, after Athens. Macedonia is extremely mountainous, as is the neighboring region of Thrace or Thraki. Central Macedonia is the most popular destination for tourists in Greece aside from Athens and a few of the Greek islands. One of its attractions is the Chalkidiki Peninsula, which kind of looks like a hand with 3 fingers, or maybe a claw. It has thousands of beaches covering 550 kilometers of coastline, along with spectacular mountains covered with dense forests. On one of the 3 fingers of Chalkidiki, there's an autonomous territory run by Eastern Orthodox monks called the Monastic Republic of Mount Athos, where around 2,000 monks reside in 20 monasteries. Although its landscapes and monasteries are stunning, no women are allowed to enter the territory at all. The only way for women to go there is to take a cruise and view the monasteries from a distance. And maybe they can wave from the cruise ship and show a different finger. Mount Olympus, the highest mountain in Greece, which I mentioned earlier, is also located in Macedonia. Well, it's actually partly located in Macedonia and partly in the neighboring region of Thessaly, or Thessalia, Central Greece and the Peloponnese. Central Greece and the Peloponnese, or Peloponnesos, are arguably where the historical heartland of Greece lies. Much of the Mycenaean civilization existed within these regions, and later many of the Greek city-states of the ancient Greek civilization. One city-state in the Peloponnese was Sparta, known for its warrior culture and powerful army. Others include Corinth and Argos. The town of Olympia in the Peloponnese is the place where the first Olympic Games were held over 2,800 years ago. The ancient version of the Olympics included a lot of events that are still done today, like running, horse racing, wrestling, boxing, shot put, and discus. Central Greece has traditionally been known as Rumeli, meaning the land of the Romans, because the Byzantine Greeks referred to themselves as Romans even after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. It's the most populous region in Greece, with almost half of the overall population, and it's the second largest by land area. Athens, the capital of Greece, and by far the biggest city in the country with a population of 3 million, is located in central Greece. It's one of the oldest capitals in the world, which has been continuously settled for at least 3,000 years, but the first settlements there were around 7,000 years ago, on the site of the Agora and the Acropolis, 2 historical sites with ancient ruins that attract tourists to this day, including the Parthenon, which is one of the temples of the Acropolis. Another such site is the Temple of Olympian Zeus, a temple dedicated to Zeus, the head of the Olympian gods. Athens isn't known for being an objectively beautiful city, but it's certainly an interesting one. The islands. Greece has the longest coastline in Europe, and the 11th longest coastline in the world. Of course, that's not all contiguous coastline though. One reason it has so much coastline is that it has 1,200 to 6,000 islands, depending on what you count as an island, of which 227 are inhabited. The island of Crete is Greece's largest island, and it's the 5th largest in the Mediterranean Sea. In Greek mythology, it's said to be the birthplace of Zeus. It's a place where you can explore Minoan palaces, Roman ruins, and Venetian fortresses. Another one of the most famous islands is Rhodes, where one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world, the Colossus of Rhodes, once stood. Rhodes is also one of the sunniest places in the world, with 300 sunny days each year, so if you suffer from SAD, seasonal affective disorder, Rhodes might be a good place for you. The striking landscapes are dotted with sites of ancient historical importance, but the Greek islands are also attractive as beautiful places for a resort vacation, with gorgeous beaches, activities, and nightlife. For example, Corfu and Mykonos are famous for their parties and nightlife venues, Naxos is known for windsurfing and kitesurfing, and Santorini is known for its picturesque vistas and romantic atmosphere for couples, with its whitewashed marble buildings. It's also sometimes associated with the legendary lost city of Atlantis, first written about by Plato in 360 BC. A lot of the people you'll likely encounter in the Greek islands and other tourist places are tourists, but what about the permanent residents of Greece? Greece has a population of about 10.38 million. But back in 2005, the population was 11.2 million. The population of Greece has declined significantly due to a low birth rate and brain drain, the emigration of highly skilled and educated citizens who have better economic opportunities elsewhere. If this trend continues, it could have tremendous consequences for Greek society and its economy. The main religion is Orthodox Christianity, with 90% of the population. And in terms of language, 99% of Greece's population speaks Greek. It's one of the oldest languages in the world, and the earliest fragments of Greek writing date back to 1450 BC. But those are just the fragments we have. The language goes back further than that. The Greek language has had a tremendous impact on the vocabulary of most modern European languages. You can find out more about it in my video about the Greek language on my other channel, GEOfocus. One final noteworthy thing about Greece is its cuisine. Greek cuisine is amazing, which is why it's popular all over the world. Some amazing Greek dishes are moussaka, similar to lasagna with sautéed eggplant, a dip made with fish roe called taramosalata, stuffed grape leaves called domades, and a sweet syrupy pastry called baklava. Greek cuisine shares many dishes in common with Turkish cuisine because Greece and Turkey are neighbors, and the Byzantine and Ottoman empires controlled much of the same territory during different time periods. Greece is a fascinating country, in large part because of its stunning landscapes and world-changing history. If you go there, you can explore the ruins and remnants of ancient Greek civilization, as well as other empires that have ruled Greece for a period of time. And if you can't go to Greece in person, well, you can still enjoy all the influences that the ancient Greeks had on the Western world, and on the world in general. Now, over to you. If you're from Greece, what do you want other people to know about your country the most? And to other people, what's something you find interesting about Greece? Leave your comments down below. It's home to the capital of the ancient Roman Empire, it contains Europe's tallest volcano, and its southernmost point is only 113 kilometers from Africa. These are just 3 of the things you will learn about Italy. Welcome to the GeoFocus channel. Today we're going to focus on Italy, a country well known for its long coastline and beaches, its magnificent mountains, and monumental architecture. Italy is located in southern Europe and shares land borders with France, Switzerland, Austria, and Slovenia. While clearly part of Europe, Italy's southernmost island, Lampedusa, is just over 100 kilometers from the North African country of Tunisia and is geologically considered part of the African continent. Italy is also unique for containing 2 very small countries enclaved entirely within its borders, San Marino and Vatican City. Italy has an area of 301,340 square kilometers. This is roughly the same as Poland or Philippines, but much smaller than neighboring countries like France, Germany, and Spain. Italy forms a long peninsula which extends south and is surrounded on all sides by the Mediterranean Sea. The country is quite mountainous, with 35% of the territory being classified as such. The 2 principal mountain ranges are the Alps to the north and the Apennine Mountains, which run down the center of the peninsula for much of its length, essentially splitting it in 2. Italy also has two very large islands, Sardinia and Sicily, with areas of 25,711 square kilometers and 24,090 square kilometers, respectively. Most of the country sees a Mediterranean climate, typified by cool or cold wet winters and dry hot summers. However, the north of the country gets more rain overall, and the areas near the Alps have an alpine climate which is much cooler. Italy is subdivided into 20 administrative regions, which can be grouped into three main geographic regions: Northern Italy, Central Italy, and Southern Italy. Most of the northern region is characterized by the Italian Alps and the Apennine mountain range overlooking the plains of the Po Valley, through which Italy's largest river, the Po River, flows until it reaches the Adriatic Sea. In the region of Valle d'Aosta, Italy's smallest region, you can find Mont Blanc, Monte Bianco in Italian, which is the highest mountain in the Alps, as well as the highest point in all of Italy and all of Western Europe. Though the summit of the mountain lies on the French-Italian border, and both countries claim that it belongs to them. In the neighboring region of Piedmont, which literally means the foot of the mountains, the Alps stretch along its northern, western, and southern borders. Piedmont's capital, Torino, hosted the 2006 Winter Olympics because of its proximity to the Alps. The Alps in southern Piedmont stretch into the coastal region of Liguria, where they transition into the Apennine mountain range, which more or less marks the southern boundary of northern Italy. In Liguria, the Apennine Mountains run very close to the coast and sometimes meet it, forming dramatic landscapes like Cinque Terre, which attracts visitors from all over the world, and you can see exactly why from these amazing images. Nestled between the Apennine Mountains and the Po River is Emilia-Romagna. It's famous the world over for its culinary traditions, which is probably related to its history as one of Italy's biggest agricultural producers. The most populous region in northern Italy, and all of Italy for that matter, is Lombardy, with 10 million people. Its regional capital, Milan, is the country's financial center, as well as a global mecca of the fashion industry. Another world-famous city in the northern region is Venice. It's the capital of Veneto, and is famous for its 158 canals. The historical center of Venice is located on a series of islands in the Venetian lagoon, and even today, locals get around by boat using the canals. Or they walk, since there are lots of bridges too. Other facts about northern Italy. 3 of Italy's 5 autonomous regions are found there: Valle d'Aosta, Trentino Alto Adige, and Friuli Venezia Giulia. They are autonomous because of their distinct cultural and linguistic heritage. Bologna University, named after the capital city of Emilia-Romagna, is the oldest university in Europe, founded in 1088. The central region is characterized by the Apennine mountain range and the hills on either side of it. There are few plains in this region, though they are quite fertile. The region of Tuscany, or Toscana in Italian, needs no introduction. The beauty of the Tuscan plains is one of its most famous features, even though they comprise only 8.4% of the region. Tuscany's most famous cities are located along the Arno River, such as Florence, which is an incredibly important city as the birthplace of the Renaissance, and Pisa, which contains the UNESCO World Heritage Site Piazza del Duomo, where the Leaning Tower of Pisa is found. Similar to Tuscany, most of Lazio is covered by hills or mountains, but 20% of its land is covered either by reclaimed marshland, like Agropontino in the south, or plains, like the Roman Campagna, the plains surrounding Rome, Italy's capital city. The capital, Rome, was first settled in the Bronze Age along the Tiber River and gradually grew to encompass its famous 7 hills. As the capital of the Roman Republic and Empire, as well as the home of the Catholic Church since its founding, Rome is punctuated by amazing historical relics such as the Colosseum, as well as Vatican City, an independent state that exists in the middle of Rome but is not part of Italy. To learn more about Vatican City, check out the video I made about it back in 2015. Other facts about central Italy. Umbria is the only region of Italy that does not border the sea or a neighboring country. The coast of the Marche region on the Adriatic Sea has 28 blue flag beaches, showing their high quality and sustainability. Like central Italy, much of southern Italy is dominated by hills and the Apennine Mountains running through the center of the peninsula, but they actually reach the coast in the province of Basilicata. Campania is a province rich in agriculture and renowned for its culinary excellence. This is in large part due to the volcanic soils provided by its most famous geographic feature, Mount Vesuvius. Mount Vesuvius lords over Naples, southern Italy's largest city. Southern Italy stands out to anyone who has ever looked at a map because its shape makes Italy look like a boot kicking something. The heel of the boot is the sub-peninsula of Salento, in the region of Apulia, which has a long, beautiful coastline as well as a rich history. Taranto is one of the oldest cities on the peninsula, founded by the settlers from the Greek city of Sparta in 706 BCE. The toe of the boot lies in Calabria, which is found at the southernmost point of the Italian peninsula. The narrow strait of Messina, 3.1 kilometers at its narrowest point, separates it from Sicily, the thing being kicked. One of Italy's two mountainous island provinces, Sicily, has an incredibly rich history which is reflected in cities like Syracuse, or Siracusa, which contains many ancient Greek buildings, and Palermo, which contains Arab Norman ones. Similar to Sicily, Sardinia has a mountainous interior and a dramatic coastline filled with beautiful scenery such as the Grotta di Nettuno. The rugged interior is guarded by mysterious sites known as nuraghe, built thousands of years ago. Because the people who built them left no written evidence, little is known about their exact purpose. Sicily and Sardinia are two more of Italy's 5 autonomous regions. Other facts about southern Italy. The Abruzzo and Molise regions both used to be a part of Abruzzo, until it was split in 1970. Calabria is one of the Italian regions most prone to earthquakes. An earthquake between 7.5 and 8.2 on the Richter scale essentially destroyed Calabria's capital, Reggio di Calabria, in 1908. Italy is unfortunately affected by more earthquakes than other European countries because of its proximity to where the African and Eurasian plates meet. This geological activity also produced several volcanoes, like Etna in eastern Sicily, Stromboli in the Aeolian Islands north of Sicily, and Mount Vesuvius in Campania. In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius famously destroyed the Roman towns of Pompeii and Herculaneum. But if you visit Italy, don't worry. These are the only 3 active volcanoes, and Vesuvius hasn't erupted since 1944. Despite being a democratic republic with an elected legislature, Italy is famous for the instability of its governments. From the time the current constitution was established in 1946 until this video was published in 2021, Italy has had 68 different governments. That's almost 1 per year. I think it's time to stop just changing governments and actually change your system, folks. In 2020, Italy's population was 60.3 million, similar to the UK or France. Italy's population is actually in decline due to low birth rates and migration to other countries. That's despite the fact that there is a significant number of immigrants in Italy. Around 91% of the population are Italian citizens, while around 9% are foreign nationals. The largest group among them are from Romania. Another 10% or so of Italian citizens also have an immigrant background. Roman Catholicism is by far the most common religion in Italy, with 75 to 80% belonging to that faith. Because the Catholic Church has been based in Italy since its inception, it has always been very influential there. Even today, the Catholic Church remains influential in Italian society, and therefore social issues on which the Catholic Church takes a strong position, such as the recognition of same-sex marriages, are more controversial and contested than elsewhere in Western Europe. At the national level, Italian is the official language and understood by nearly everyone in the country. Of course, on the ground, the situation is more complicated because various regional languages are spoken. Often called dialects, they are not in fact dialects but rather separate languages, closely related to and influenced by, but also distinct from Standard Italian. I made a video about this topic on my other channel, GEOfocus. It's called Languages of Italy. As we have seen, Italy's geography is fascinating, and it would be wrong to assume that it's the same as other Western European countries. The thing that surprised me most while making this video was just how much of Italy is covered by mountains and hills. I actually didn't know that. Italy's central position in European history means that the landscape is dotted with monumental historical treasures. Churches, castles, and historical ruins can be seen throughout the country. These epic structures attest to the ingenuity of Italy's people and inspire the imaginations of virtual time travelers all over the world. Now over to you. If you've ever been to Italy, what's something that struck you about the geography there? And if you're Italian, what's something you would like people to know about your country? Write your answers in the comments down below. It's the most populous country in the European Union, it shares borders with 9 other countries, and it's an economic powerhouse. These are just 3 of the things that you will learn about Germany. Hello everyone, welcome to the GeoFocus channel, and my name is Paul. Before I get started, I want to say thanks to all of you who have already supported Langfocus and GeoFocus on Patreon. If you haven't seen my Patreon page yet, please have a look and see what you think. If you value my channels, then please consider becoming a patron. Okay, and on to the main topic. Today we are talking about Germany. The Federal Republic of Germany is one of the most important countries in Europe. With a population of 81.5 million people, it is the most populous country in Europe, and it is an economic powerhouse. In fact, it has the largest economy in Europe, and it has the fourth largest economy in the whole world. Germany is located in Western and Central Europe, and it shares land borders with 9 other countries. It is bordered by Denmark to the north, by Netherlands to the northwest, by Belgium and Luxembourg to the west, by Switzerland to the southwest, by Austria to the southeast, by Czech Republic to the east, and also by Poland to the east. It has a total land area of 357,012 square kilometers. That makes it the 62nd largest country in the world, and that makes it slightly bigger than the Republic of Congo and slightly smaller than Japan. This is the current map of Germany, but Germany used to be much bigger at one point. Here is a map of Germany prior to World War I. Its land area was more than 50% larger than it is now, occupying land that included much of present-day Poland and Denmark. Germany has a number of different geographic regions with differing landforms. The northernmost third of the country lies at a low elevation and is characterized by river wetlands, sandy soil in the northeast, and marsh-like conditions in the northwest near the border with the Netherlands. Moving south to the central area, there are more areas of forest. Moving further south, the elevation increases as we enter the southern areas, which are characterized by hills and mountains, some of which were created by volcanic activity. The highland regions extend to the east and lead into the Ore Mountains on the Czech border. The east-central part of the country, south of Berlin, is similar to the north of the country, with rivers, wetlands, and sandy conditions. And then, of course, there are the highest, most mountainous areas in the German Alps. There is quite a dramatic variety of elevations in Germany. The highest elevation is 2,962 meters in the Alps, and the lowest elevation is 3.54 meters below sea level in the northern lowlands. One of Germany's most important features is the Rhine River. It begins in the southeastern Swiss Alps, defines part of the borders between Switzerland and its neighbors, Liechtenstein and Austria, then flows into Germany and forms part of the border between Germany and France. Then it flows through the Rhineland of western Germany, then into the Netherlands where it drains into the North Sea. It is the second longest river in Central and Western Europe after the Danube River, which is another important feature of Germany. Beginning in the Black Forest in southwestern Germany, the river flows for 2,860 kilometers through Germany, then travels through 9 more countries before draining into the Black Sea. The climate of the country is a combination of temperate oceanic climate in the western portions of the country, on the one hand, resulting in mild winter and summer temperatures, and a temperate continental climate in the eastern portion of the country, resulting in more extreme summer and winter temperatures. Then, of course, there are the alpine regions in the south, which are colder and get more precipitation, something which snowboarders and skiers are very happy about. There is no consistent dry season in Germany, and it can rain at any time of the year. I've only been to Germany once, and that was just at Frankfurt Airport to change planes, and I looked outside and it was pouring rain, and that was in the summer. The Federal Republic of Germany is comprised of 16 states. 2 of these states, Berlin and Hamburg, are city-states.
Stadtstaaten.
One other is the Free Hanseatic city of
Bremen,
which is kind of like a city-state. It consists of 2 cities,
Bremen
and
Bremerhaven.
There are 13 other area states. In German they are called
Flächenländer.
These are
Baden-Württemberg, Brandenburg, Hesse, Niedersachsen,
or Lower Saxony,
Mecklenburg-Vorpommerisch, Nordrhein-Westfalen,
or North Rhine-Westphalia,
Rheinland-Pfalz,
or Rhineland-Palatinate,
Saarland, Sachsen,
or Saxony,
Sachsen-Anhalt,
or Saxony-Anhalt,
Schleswig-Holstein, Thüringen,
or Thuringia,
Bayern,
or Bavaria. The most populous state is North Rhine-Westphalia with a population of over 17.6 million people. The capital city of this state is Düsseldorf, which has a population of about 605,000 people. That makes it the 7th largest city in Germany. That doesn't sound like a very big city, considering that it's situated in the most populous state in Germany, but Düsseldorf is actually part of a gigantic metropolitan area called the Rhine-Ruhr metropolitan area, which altogether has a population of over 11.3 million people. It is an uninterrupted megacity that is considered polycentric. That means it doesn't just have one central city with a bunch of suburbs, it actually has several central cities. Another well-known city located within this megacity is Cologne, with over 1 million inhabitants. And if you've ever wondered, then yes, the men's fragrance cologne does come from Cologne, Germany. Other important German cities you've probably heard of include Hamburg, Munich, Frankfurt, and of course Berlin. The largest city in Germany is Berlin, the capital city of Germany, and one of Germany's city-states. It has a population of 3.5 million, making it the second largest city in the EU after London, and its metro area has a population of 5,871,022 people. But some of those people lie outside the borders of the city-state. Today, Berlin is simply the capital of Germany, but prior to 1989, the situation was not so simple. After World War II and until 1989, Germany was a divided country with two capitals. Bonn was the provisional capital of West Germany, and East Berlin was the capital of East Germany. West Berlin was part of West Germany, but it was completely separated from the rest of West Germany and was completely surrounded by East German territory. Beginning in 1961, West Berlin was enclosed by the Berlin Wall. The wall divided the city until 1989, when it was torn down during mass civil unrest and signaled the end of the communist regime in East Germany. For more than 4 decades, East Germany was under communist rule, while West Germany was busy building a free market economy. Since the reunification of Germany in 1990, the two areas have mostly been successfully reintegrated, but there are still some lingering effects of the division. For example, there is a lower percentage of young people living in the former areas of East Germany. That's because after the reunification, educated young people left East Germany and went to the more economically developed West German areas. And still to this day, the average income in the former East German areas is lower than the average income in the former West German areas. It is only about 3/4 of the average income in the former West German areas. The language of Germany is of course German. There is the standard German language, but Germany also has a number of distinct dialects, some of which, for example Low German in the north, are different enough to be considered separate languages. For more information about German and its dialects, check out my video on the GEOfocus channel right here. If you visit Germany, you will likely hear some foreign languages as well. That's because Germany is the second biggest destination for migrants in the world after the United States. Around 16 million people in Germany are of foreign or immigrant descent. That's around 20% of the population. This proportion of foreign or immigrant residents will likely increase in the coming years as Germany accepts more migrants and refugees from the Middle East. Around 7 million of these 16 million people are non-citizens. The biggest group amongst them are Turkish people. Many were brought to Germany as guest workers to work in factories short-term, but ended up staying long-term in the country. About 61% of Germany's population is Christian. That includes 29.5% practicing Roman Catholicism and 27.9% practicing a form of Protestant evangelicalism, and 3.3% practice other forms of Christianity. 34% of the country are non-religious, and about 5% of the country are Muslims. That's a number which has been increasing due to quite large-scale Muslim immigration. Germany is an economic powerhouse which produces world-famous automobiles like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen, clothing from companies like Adidas and Puma, beer from companies like Beck's Brewery, and industrial machines used all around the world. Chances are that you use German products every day without even realizing it. This German ingenuity is nothing new and stems all the way back to German composers like Bach and Beethoven, whose influence is boundless. Thank you for watching the GeoFocus channel. If you have any additional information about Germany that you want to share, then please share it in the comments down below. And also be sure to subscribe to GeoFocus and LangFocus, and check out my Patreon page if you think that my content is valuable. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. It's tiny, it's rich, and it's mountainous. These are just 3 of the things that you will learn about Liechtenstein. Hello and welcome to the GeoFocus channel. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to talk about a country called Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein is a tiny country in Europe that is sandwiched between the eastern border of Switzerland and the western border of Austria. It is so small that when you look at a map you might not even notice it. Or if you're like me, then you might mistake it for a city in Austria. Hey, that was a long time ago. With a total land area of only 160 square kilometers, Liechtenstein is one of the smallest countries in the world. In fact, it is the 6th smallest country. If you can't imagine what 160 square kilometers seems like, it is 24.5 kilometers from north to south and 9.4 kilometers from west to east. It is about 90% the size of the District of Columbia, you know, where Washington, D.C. is located. Liechtenstein is not only landlocked, it is actually double landlocked. That means that it is landlocked, but the countries around it, Switzerland and Austria, are also landlocked themselves. Liechtenstein is only one of 2 countries in the world that is double landlocked, the other one being Uzbekistan. So, to get to the beach, it might be a bit of a hassle. You have to travel through 2 countries to get there. But maybe it's not too inconvenient since there's no border patrol or passport check between Liechtenstein and Switzerland. You can just travel freely between the 2 countries as you please. There is no demarcated border, and Liechtenstein actually has no military. Maybe that's why back in 2007 the Swiss military was able to accidentally invade Liechtenstein. 170 Swiss soldiers were patrolling and just accidentally wandered into Liechtenstein's territory without even noticing. And nobody inside Liechtenstein noticed either. When the soldiers noticed their mistake, they simply turned back and walked back into Switzerland, and the consequences were absolutely nothing. I guess it's not such a big deal since Switzerland's army is actually responsible for defending Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein is located in the Rhine Valley of the European Alps. The lowest elevation is 430 meters, but much of the eastern half of the country is located in the mountains, and the highest elevation is 2,599 meters at Grauspitz Mountain. Liechtenstein has an alpine climate with warm, humid summers and cool or cold winters, but just how cold depends on the elevation. In the capital city of Vaduz, summer temperatures normally range from 15 degrees to about 24 degrees Celsius, while the winter temperatures range from about -1 to 5 degrees Celsius. At the higher mountain elevations, the temperatures are obviously colder and reach as low as -20 degrees sometimes. Predictably, the population of the country is just as small as the country is. The population is only 37,340 people, and the population of the capital city Vaduz is just 5,100 people. But this is no rural backwater. When adjusted for purchasing power parity, Liechtenstein has the 3rd highest GDP in the world. That means that it's basically the 3rd richest country in the world. In such a small rural country, where does that money come from? Well, Liechtenstein is a business hub and a financial center with very low corporate tax rates. That means that business people from all around the world open businesses in Liechtenstein, and Liechtenstein gets tax revenue from all of those different businesses. Liechtenstein has more registered businesses than it has citizens. But that means, of course, that those businesses are legally registered on paper in Liechtenstein, but most likely operated somewhere else. Liechtenstein also has its own manufacturing industry, including being the world's largest producer of false teeth. Agriculture and the tourism industry are also important, with tourists flocking to Liechtenstein's mountains for winter sports and for summer hiking. The official language is German, with the local dialect being very similar to the Swiss-German dialects spoken across the border. German is also the language of Liechtenstein's national anthem, but when you listen to Liechtenstein's national anthem, it might seem kind of strange because they actually sing God Save the Queen, the UK's national anthem. They just changed the words. I guess they thought there's no point in writing a new song since so few people will actually be singing it. Liechtenstein is a country that many people outside of Europe have never even heard of, but it is a relaxing and beautiful place to visit. And if you really want to experience Liechtenstein, you can actually rent the entire country for $70,000 per day. A few years back, rapper Snoop Dogg actually inquired about renting the country so he could shoot a music video, but he was refused. Maybe they were worried about potential air pollution. But after refusing Snoop Dogg, they thought about it and thought, hey, maybe it's actually a good idea to rent out Liechtenstein, and they began to rent it out in conjunction with Airbnb. But so far, nobody has actually rented the country. I guess that's what happens when you turn down the one and only Snoop Dogg. Who knew such a tiny country could be so interesting? It's a tiny country, it has a tiny population, and nobody is even born there. These are just 3 of the things that you will learn about the Vatican city-state. Hello everyone, welcome to the GeoFocus channel, and my name is Paul. Today I'm going to be talking about the Vatican city-state, or just Vatican City as it's commonly known. Vatican City is an independent state which is under the authority of the Catholic Church. Its head of state is the Bishop of Rome, otherwise known as the Pope. Vatican City is an enclave inside Rome, Italy, even though it is not a part of Italy itself. It is surrounded by walls that keep it separated from its surroundings. With a total land area of 0.44 square kilometers, it is the smallest country in the world. It is only 1/8 the size of Central Park in New York City. It's about the same size as Disney Magic Kingdom in Paris. It also has the smallest population of any country in the world. There are only 800 people living there, and only 450 of those people are citizens. You become a citizen of the Vatican City state if you are working for the Roman Catholic Church and you are assigned to live there. But as soon as you are no longer working there, your citizenship is cancelled. Not all employees are Vatican citizens, but they can become one, and they are given a Vatican passport. And all Vatican passports are diplomatic passports, which might be useful because you can use the fast-track lane at the airport. And you have diplomatic immunity, so you can commit as many crimes as you want and you won't get caught or arrested for it. Until the Vatican cancels your citizenship, that is. Citizens include the Pope, cardinals, clergy who work in diplomatic roles, and other locally based clergy. And there are some employees who are not clergy. There are also some members of the Swiss Guard who are assigned to protect the Vatican. Some citizens and residents are the wives and children of men working at the Vatican. Obviously, the clergy can't get married and have children because that's forbidden by the church, but other employees can, and members of the Swiss Guard can get married and have children. Vatican City citizens and residents come from a number of different nationalities, so what language is spoken in the Vatican? Well, Vatican City has no official language, and the language spoken depends on the two people speaking with each other and what languages they speak, but the most common lingua franca is Italian. And Latin is also used for official purposes and for official documents. Vatican City was created in 1929 by an agreement between the Catholic Church and Benito Mussolini. Historically, the Catholic Church had controlled a much larger area of modern Italy, called the Papal States, until 1870 when Italy was unified. From 1870 to 1929, the Catholic Church controlled no sovereign territory at all, and the popes couldn't leave the Vatican. The bad relations between the Catholic Church and the Italian government were mended by the creation of the Vatican City state. And a large lump sum of cash didn't hurt either. So what's inside the Vatican? Well, let's take a look at a map. This area right here is probably the most famous place in the Vatican, St. Peter's Basilica and St. Peter's Square. The Basilica is traditionally thought to be the burial site of St. Peter, one of the apostles of Jesus. His tomb is said to be directly below the basilica. The basilica is the second largest church in the world at a height of 136.6 meters tall, 150 meters wide, and 220 meters long. And St. Peter's Square is also huge. It is 320 meters long and 240 meters wide. This huge plaza square is where tourists and pilgrims gather to see the Pope give blessings. Over here we have the Apostle Palace, which is the Pope's official residence. The building contains living quarters and offices, the Vatican museums and libraries, and the Sistine Chapel. The Sistine Chapel is most famous for its mural paintings on the walls and ceilings, especially Michelangelo's ceiling mural and The Last Judgment. The Vatican museums are massive, and if you see everything on display, you will walk 14.5 kilometers. It is said that if you spend 1 minute looking at each item on display, it will take you 4 years to see everything in the museum. And by that point, a lot of the exhibits would have changed and there would be even more to see. But it might take you another 4 years of waiting in line just to get inside. Over to the west, we can see numerous palace buildings, churches, and schools situated among the Vatican Gardens. The Vatican Gardens, which were created in the 13th century, cover more than half of the whole country. They're not open to the public, but you can take an organized tour of the gardens. Did you know? Vatican City has the highest crime rate out of any country in the world. Why? Because crime rates are calculated on a per capita basis, and the Vatican City has only 800 people. So who commits all those crimes? Well, it's either tourists or more likely other visitors who come to the Vatican to steal from those tourists. Pickpockets are a huge problem in the Vatican because of the crowds of tourists and pilgrims. We don't know how many people visit the Vatican City each year because anyone can just walk in freely without a passport, but the Vatican museums and the Sistine Chapel get 25,000 visitors per day, or about 5 million visitors per year. The Vatican is a fascinating place, so you might want to be one of those 5 million people someday. Thank you for watching the GeoFocus channel. You might also want to check out my video on polyglot popes on the LangFocus channel right here. If you have any comments about the Vatican City, leave them down below, and also check out my Facebook, Twitter, and of course my Patreon if you would like to support GeoFocus and LangFocus. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.